Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Market Open. We are live. It is Monday, March 2nd, and we have a lot to talk about as we get into analyzing what is going on, not only in the global capital equity markets, but obviously the geopolitical events that have happened over the weekend will have implications on gold, silver, commodities, oil prices, the stock market. Everything is going to be affected and going to be changed as we are entering a new world. And that world is one in which the United States has decided to conduct a military operation against Iran. And that operation has led to the death of the supreme leader in Iran. And I hope the rest of the year is not framed by this story, but it does feel like for the coming weeks, at least coming weeks, if not months, this is going to be the number one story that we have to talk about. A variety of different things are happening in the pre-market. We have a bunch of different headlines outside of what's happening just from the Iran strike over the weekend. Obviously, futures, we talked about this last night, were not going to be pretty. They were red. They continue to go red. Nvidia down 1.3%. The S&P 500, 679. We lost 680. Got all the way to 676 at one point in the pre-market. 670 has been that core technical level that has been very, very important to maintain. And today we're going to find out if we're actually going to be able to hold on to 670. It's about another 0.5% or 1.5% away. Hopefully we do, but if not, then we're going to have to adjust and see how this plays out. Lockheed Martin, that's up 5%. It was up 14% yesterday. So it is down a bit from where it was up. Raytheon's also up 5%. Palantir is up. Your defense contractors are up in the pre-market. Palantir right there, 142.34. That's up 3.75%. Outside of defense contractors and oil, everything else is taking a pretty nasty hit. Coinbase is down 3%. T1's down 4%. PayPal's down 3%. Rocket Lab's down 3%. ASTS, they've got earnings today after the bell. We'll cover that along with Big Bear AI. That's down 2%. Apple's down 1%. The Qs are down 1.2%. Amazon, which had one of its AWS servers hit in the midst of all the bombing over the weekend. We'll talk more about that. That's down 2%. Meta's down 1.5%. Micron's down 2%. AppLovin's down 3%. Google's down 2.5%. So obviously tech is getting wrecked right now. And the question today will be if tech continues to get wrecked. Gold and silver are up. So your kind of flight to safety assets have kind of maintained the way they need to be. Silver is actually down a little bit right now, but gold did get a bit of a gap up. And oil prices are the other thing that are up. And, you know, they were up a lot more last night. They are up about 8% on average right here. We have a bunch of updates in terms of what's going on with oil. Unfortunately, there was a refinery in Saudi Arabia that got bombed today from Iran. And that also, you know, created some more pressure on oil prices. So we'll discuss what's going on there. Obviously, if oil prices go up, natural gas prices go up, there are some beneficiaries in the stock market. VG, that is up 17%. I know a lot of us here own that name. I mean, it's not up necessarily for the best reasons, but there are companies that the market will rotate into when things like this happen. VG right there, 18%. Next Decade also had earnings. I did not go through all the earnings. We'll pull up their numbers, but that stock also up 11% in this environment. If you put up some relatively good earnings with the oncoming demand for oil and oil prices going higher, then a company like Next Decade or VG is obviously going to catch the bid. Chevron, Exxon, all of those are running as well. Chevron's up about 5%. Exxon's up 5%. And so today is one of those days where the market is clearly rotating into what they think will be the beneficiary of a prolonged war. The broader question is, will that war actually last to the levels that the market thinks it does? And that's what we will be talking about today. Before we get into everything that happened over the weekend, Nvidia decided to invest in two companies. One is Lumentum. I know a lot of people have talked about this in terms of photonics and optics. That stock is up 7.6%. Another one is Coherent, which is in the same space. That stock is up 7%. So you have two investments from Nvidia of $2 billion each, $4 billion in total. This actually goes, you know, very well with the thesis that Steve has been talking about a lot around Nvidia becoming the Berkshire of technology and just putting an equity stake into all these different companies. Obviously, they have a ton of cash. Like, they have to do something with it. Buying back their stock could be effective, but investing and propping up the ecosystem is probably more effective. And so you got Coherent and Lumentum that are getting the benefit from this. The other beneficiary right here is AAOI. I know this name, Applied Optronics, has been getting a lot of different press over the weekend. It was up 56% on Friday. It's up another 28% because it's in that same sphere as Lumentum and Coherent. They had a really good earnings on Friday. They beat revenue by like 900%. It was some crazy number. And as a result, you know, that stock's gaining some momentum. Now, is this time to FOMO into any of these three names? I don't know. I mean, they're all up dramatically, not only year to date, but over the past week. So it's one of those things you just have to watch out for. But they are catching the bid right there from Nvidia as it continues to make some more of these equity investments. Unfortunately, Nvidia is down about 2% in the pre-markets. All right, so let's get into it and let's talk about what has happened over the weekend. There's a lot to discuss, a lot to get into. And I imagine throughout the day and throughout the week, the conversation will be around the implications of what's going on with the Iran war. And if it actually, quite frankly, turns into a war and is not just turning into a special military operation. So let's start off with the basics. What happened over the weekend? Friday night, Saturday morning, Trump launched a strike on Iran. The supreme leader of Iran, the Ayatollah, was killed in that strike. And that is something that was one of the main goals of the U.S. and Israel working together on this strike. What was more pressing to me was less about the actual need to engage in military action, but the logic behind why the military action was taken. And the two things that have come forward have been Trump's insistence and the United States' insistence. Pete Hegseth just went live. We'll watch a couple clips from him in a second, around Iran not having a nuclear weapon. And that was kind of the utmost of priority to make sure that the Iranians would not be able to achieve that nuclear weapon. It felt like this was the right time to strike, in their opinion, and that's why they went after it. Trump gave the final order at around 3:15 on Friday, and he said no aborts on the mission. And then the strike was conducted early Saturday morning at East Coast time around 1 a.m. And the second was to free the Iranian people. So not only was this taken as an action to stop Iran from getting nuclear weapons, Trump was very clear in a statement he put out on Friday morning or Saturday morning, which is that it is now time for liberation from oppression of the Iranian people. This is what he said over the weekend.
The alternative, face certain death. So lay down your arms. You will be treated fairly with total immunity, or you will face certain death. Finally, to the great, proud people of Iran, I say tonight that the hour of your freedom is at hand. Stay sheltered. Don't leave your home. It's very dangerous outside. Bombs will be dropping everywhere. When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take. This will be probably your only chance for generations. For many years, you have asked for America's help, but you never got it. No president was willing to do what I am willing to do tonight. Now you have a president who is giving you what you want. So let's see how you respond. America is backing you with overwhelming strength and devastating force. Now is the time to seize control of your destiny and to unleash the prosperous and glorious future that is close within your reach.
That was, I think, the most interesting part of what happened over the weekend. I mean, this was not just a military operation to stop the nuclear weapons, but this was also, in the words of the president, an operation to create freedom for the Iranians. Now, whether you believe that or not is a different question, but that is what the administration is touting as their kind of main argument. And so I want to present the two perspectives here that are going back and forth, and those two perspectives are conflicting. I know everyone has their different sides and everyone can assume different political perspectives, but for me, quite frankly, I try to look at both sides and try to make sense of both sides to the best that I can. First is the perspective of the Trump administration. What was wrong with the current regime? And I think it's important to put this in context for a lot of people that might be not as familiar with what the Ayatollah has done over the past 37 years being in power. Funded militias that killed thousands of Americans, sent thousands of drones to Russia that were used in Ukraine, funded Bashar al-Assad when he was using chemical warfare, most recently beat a woman to death for showing her hair and taking off the hijab. That is what started a lot of the protests, which then resulted in about 25,000 people that were killed in the protests from the regime. Iran routinely hanged gay people. They killed protesters. And then one of the most barbaric things that the regime has done over the past 30 years, which is that they would rape women before executing them because their laws said that women could not be virgins before going to death. These are some of the very, very hostile and the barbaric things that this administration inside of Iran has done. That is part of the reason why a lot of the people that I talk to from Iran or that are Iranian, well, we're going to have Farzad, who's going to be on the market close today and get his perspective as well, have been very, very, very happy around this happening. In fact, I have one friend who lives in Oman. She was one of my good friends in college. She ended up moving. She was a foreign exchange student at Rutgers, and now she went back to Oman. She's not a fan of Trump. I mean, she is free Palestine as to the largest extent. I mean, she is not a fan of Israel. She's not a fan of Trump. over the weekend, the stuff that she was sharing on her Instagram about how she was happy that America finally took, I mean, explicitly happy that America took action and finally got rid of this guy. I couldn't believe what I was seeing because, I mean, she's praising Trump and she's praising the United States, and she is not a fan. I will tell you, she is not a fan of the United States, not a fan of Israel, not a fan of Trump. And so I think the conflicting narratives over the weekend have been a lot of people confused about why Trump did this and making the argument that once again, the United States is causing a forever war. But then you have the perspective of the Iranian people or people from the region, people that fled the region, but they still have family there, saying they were waiting for this to happen and they're finally happy that this took place. And that is why I think this becomes so much more nuanced, and it's not easy for people to make the argument, that there is one good side or one bad side. So that's the Trump administration perspective. The other perspective is that the United States once again is getting into a forever war. We tried to do this in 2003. It didn't necessarily work out. The ability to just install democracy or freedom inside of a region isn't necessarily the thing that works out. Even if you do get rid of the leader, which the United States, to their credit, did on the first day of this war, the ability to fill that power vacuum, which inevitably is always created with something else that is able to install some level of democracy, some level of cooperation with the United States, it's not the easiest thing to do. And it's especially not the easiest thing to do if we don't have boots on the ground. Unfortunately, 4 Americans have already been killed throughout the operations over the past 48 hours. So I think the two perspectives that are going back and forth are one perspective saying this needed to be done to liberate the Iranian people and stop them from getting a nuclear weapon. The IGRC, obviously a state sponsor of terror, they've already started bombing a ton of other countries in the Middle East, which we've seen over the weekend and this morning, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Kuwait. Having said that, yeah, that's one perspective. The other perspective is if we actually go forward with this and full on go for regime change, which is what Trump is going for, the implications of this are not as pretty and also not as easy to necessarily justify. And as a result, I think those two perspectives are going to go back and forth. Now, how will the market react to that? We'll spend a lot of time talking about it. Ultimately, I think the geopolitical war dip ends up being bought, and you're seeing already some names be used as kind of a safety hedge. I really don't think Nvidia is going to a 10 times PE now that it's at 17 times price to earnings. So, we'll talk more about the implications of the market, but the political implications of this and what this means for the not only legacy of the Trump administration, but also the midterms that are coming up, which will have a direct implication on stocks because, you might have some Democrats, if they win the House and the Senate, that aren't the easiest to cooperate with the AI trade. That is, I think, what's going to define the coming months. And I think those two perspectives back and forth of, hey, they need freedom, but hey, we don't really know how to install freedom as the United States is the broader issue. Pete Hegseth was live this morning. Let's take a look at some of the clips he said and some of the questions he answered around this entire joint operation.
Thank you, Secretary Hegseth. I had 2 questions for you. First, are there currently any American boots on the ground in Iran?
No, but we're not going to go into the exercise of what we will or will not do. I think it's one of those fallacies for a long time that this department or presidents or others should tell the American people this, and our enemies, by the way, here's exactly what we'll do. Here's exactly how long we'll go. Here's exactly how far we'll go. Here's what we're willing to do and not do. It's foolishness. And so President Trump ensures that our enemies understand we'll go as far as we need to go to advance American interests. But we're not dumb about it. You don't have to roll 200,000 people in there and stay for 20 years. We've proven that you can achieve objectives that advance American interests without being foolish about it. Now, will we be bold about it? Are we willing to be decisive about it? Do we put months and months of planning into what kind of effects we want to achieve? Absolutely. But going forward, why in the world would we tell you, the enemy, anybody, what we will or will not do in pursuit of an objective? We fight to win. We fight to achieve the objectives the President of the United States has laid out. And we will do so unapologetically. Thank you.
Now, again, some people are going to hear that and say, yup, USA, we got to go for it. Other people are going to hear that and say, this guy is getting us into another forever war that we don't really have the best track record of when it comes to effectively dismantling regimes, toppling them, and instituting new ones that create some level of democracy. Those, once again, will be the two perspectives that are fighting for, quite frankly, the soul of the country over the coming months. And in the midterms, we'll get a referendum on that. But that is the Trump administration's stance, which is that what has to happen will happen. Here's another clip of Hegseth explaining exactly why this happened over the weekend.
2 questions for you. The president said yesterday in his video message that we will leave Iran when we complete all of our objectives. What are our objectives? And can you share more information on how the soldiers who were killed were killed?
Well, I laid out the objectives, as did the chairman. They're completely nested. I mean, Iran has an ability to project power against us and our allies in ways that we can't tolerate. So whether that's ballistic missiles and drones, so offensive capabilities, effectively their navy, which would attempt to set other terms and impose different costs, drone capabilities, which we laid out there, and ultimately, though, this tying it back to Midnight Hammer, the president has been willing to make a deal. You can't have a nuclear bomb. Radical Islamists can't have a nuclear bomb that they wield against the world. He gave them every single opportunity. Then we precisely took it away. And even then, after that, they didn't have that. They didn't come to the table with a willingness to give it away. So ultimately, those nuclear ambitions, which never ceased, are something that had to be addressed as well. So that's a discrete sense of what's being addressed here to ensure that they can't use that conventional umbrella to continue a pursuit of nuclear ambitions. And then as it pertains to the U.S. casualties, that particular incident was, you have air defenses and the lot's coming in and you hit most of it. And we absolutely do. We have incredible air defenders. Every once in a while, you might have one, unfortunately, we call it a squirter that makes its way through. And in that particular case, it happened to hit a tactical operations center that was fortified, but
so you can tell from what Pete Hegseth said, which reiterated what Trump said as well, it is about nuclear weapons. And Trump has not spoken yet ever since he gave his sort of recorded remarks over the weekend. And so I'm sure we'll probably get some comments either today or tomorrow from Trump. But that is what they are trying to convince the American people, and not just the American people, but the broader world about. This was about nukes. This was about Iran not having those nukes. And this was about finally toppling the regime. If that is what they are staking this mission on, then success is going to be defined as not even democracy, but some level of cooperation with the United States with a new regime that is not governed by the type of fundamentalist law that was previous governing the Iranian people. The Iranian people obviously would like that overwhelmingly based on what we've been seeing. But the question is, will we be able to install that, and the process we will have to go through in order to enable some level of freedom in Iran. And Iran's not going to let that happen too easily. So they are now launching proxy attacks against other countries in the Middle East. Iranian drones struck in Saudi Aramco Ras Tanur facility. Ras Tanur is the single largest oil export terminal on the planet. It handles roughly 6.5 million barrels per day, nearly 7% of global oil supply flowing through this one facility. They also struck an apartment complex in Bahrain, and various different elements of how other countries are now reacting to this is leading to not only oil prices spiking up, but other countries potentially getting involved. China and Russia have not necessarily said anything over the past 2 days. China gets a lot of their oil from Iran as well, so you would imagine that they're not necessarily the happiest about this. The Strait of Hormuz is not closed. If it does close, obviously it would not be the best thing for oil supply, given it is the single point of flow of oil across the entire world that allows oil supply to be how it is. Again, if the Iranians were to close it, I think the Saudi Arabian military, the United States military would try to put an end to that. So I don't think that's the biggest thing to worry about. But oil prices affect everything in the economy. They definitely affect the affordability narrative that Trump has been going for. And so that's also something to think about. And then you've just got other things that have happened throughout the entire morning. This was an F-15 that crashed in Kuwait. Thankfully, the fighters or the pilots ejected themselves before the plane ended up crashing. The official response was a friendly fire is what led to that plane coming down. But I mean, this is where we're at. It's a war. It's not officially been declared a war, but you've got a lot of different countries getting involved right now. And it is starting to feel more than not that it is going to become a war. Trump did say yesterday in a quick interview with the New York Times that he expects the bombing campaign to last for another 4 weeks. And, that's basically a month, right? So does that month turn into multiple months? Do we actually get the job before the 4 weeks ends? Lots of questions, not enough answers. But the truth of the reality is we've been analyzing this potential Iranian strike almost like it was this boogeyman, I think, for the past 3 weeks. Like, oh, it might happen. And then it finally happened. And Axios was reporting it was supposed to happen February 21st. It ends up getting delayed for a week. And so now it's here. And now we are living in a new world in which, okay, we've taken strikes. It is happening. And there is no going back from what just happened, even if, Trump tries to seek some type of an off-ramp. The question is, will the Iranians cooperate with it? And, Axios also reported over the weekend that after the Ayatollah was killed, Trump called up the Iranians saying, hey, do you want to seriously negotiate now? And they said no. So not only were they being hesitant to negotiate before the attack happened in terms of giving up their nuclear weapons, which is what prompted the administration to take the stance that they did and end up striking. After the Ayatollah was killed, the Iranians still didn't want to negotiate, which means to me, I don't think an off-ramp is coming that easily. And if it's not, then it likely means we're going to have to deal with more of this continuing. Bitcoin right there, 65,514. Bitcoin was at 62 over the weekend, so that one got a bit of a recovery. VG, again, getting the benefit right there. That's up 15%. Next Decade is up. Chevron, Exxon, XLE, the energy ETF, all of those are pumping right here in the pre-market. The S&P 500 losing 680 at 678. That's now one of the lows of the pre-market. In about 20 minutes when the market opens, we will see if the market decides to let these names continue to fall down. All right, so I think that was a decent chunk of the perspectives that happened over the weekend. Let's transition all those perspectives into what it means for the market. My base case is a chart that I'm going to show people right here, which is that the S&P 500 tends to not really get hit when you have a war. I mean, if you look at the average 12-month return after a war, you have the Korean War, Iraq War, Gulf War, World War II, Vietnam War, Russia, Ukraine. It's up 24.9% on average over 12 months. Now, that doesn't mean this time, if we actually do end up solidifying that there's a war in Iran, that we have to go up 25% in a year. But it does mean that historically, if we're trying to use any level of data to determine what's going to happen when a war is initiated or when some type of special military operation happens, markets tend to get through it because markets are forward looking. I mean, if you look at the Israeli market today, it's up like 9%. And part of the reason for that is because markets are pricing in, at least from Israel's perspective, that the war will be won and that geopolitical tensions are going to stabilize over the coming years, which is, one of the reasons why the markets potentially could struggle. That reason might not be as prevalent anymore. So I think the markets have a unique capability to price in a lot of things that are happening. I think we will probably gap down when the market opens. I could see that easily reversing. I could see us going down further, but at some point, the multiple compression on these names is going to get a little stupid because we were already down a lot in February. And February historically is one of the worst months of the year. We already went through a lot of data around that. And March and April tend to be much, much better months. And, time will tell if we end up getting that. There's March and April over the past 20 years. Definitely a lot better than February. Apple just announced a bunch of new products. I'm looking at this right here. Apple introduces iPhone 17e. iPhone 17e will start at $600. Will be available for pre-order on Wednesday. Apple discusses Google hosting new Siri as need for cloud help grows. Okay, so the Google Siri stuff is not something that should be surprising. We know that Apple's working with Google, and they've been working with Google for a while. Google right there, 311 or 303. That's actually down 2.5% in the pre-market. Apple, are we catching a bid from this announcement? Apple is not catching a bid, 261. That is down 1%. Although they have announced that new iPhone 17e. If the stream froze for a second, then you should just refresh it. It should be better now. Although AWS has been having issues all morning, Cloudflare has been having some issues. I was actually surprised that StreamYard had no issues, but if it does have issues throughout the stream, then it's probably a Cloudflare and AWS thing, which hopefully doesn't affect the Northeast, but it is affecting other parts of the Middle East. Okay, so Apple putting out that announcement. Looks like that iPhone is going to be their big reveal. Also, I think a new MacBook is coming out. Again, there's been more demand for Apple based on what's been going on with Claude, which gets us into the conversation of what happened with Claude over the weekend. We talked about it last night, but the Anthropic CEO once again denied that the administration had come to any serious terms to deal with him in regards to allowing the Department of War to be able to use Anthropic in a meaningful way. And so he said he doesn't want to work with them. Sam Altman, this was another thing that was crazy over the weekend, came out and said, we reached an agreement with the Department of War to deploy our models in their classified network. So you got OpenAI that swooped in took over what Anthropic was using. In fact, Anthropic was down this morning. It still might be down for a lot of people because of the unprecedented level of demand that came for Anthropic. It is now #1 on the App Store. Why? Because a lot of people are canceling their OpenAI subscriptions and changing to Anthropic because they believe that Anthropic has some guts, some morals. They're sticking by what they said they would do, which is not allow mass surveillance and fully autonomous weapons. And OpenAI went the easy route and decided to take the contract. There's a lot of nuance to this, a lot of ways to discuss this. One could argue that OpenAI ended up just having better communication with the DOW, and Anthropic just didn't really understand how to negotiate in a proper way because the same deals were given and one side accepted, one side didn't accept it. The more sinister version of this is that the reason OpenAI accepted is because they don't really care about morality and they just wanted the contract and the money, and Anthropic actually was like having a hardline stance. Regardless, all of this is good for the AI trade in general because you're going to get a lot more momentum for training, but it just means that some of those companies are going to get the government contracts that they were looking for. So the Anthropic OpenAI war continues. Is Claude down this morning? It has been down for a lot of people, as was reported. For me, it was fine, but for a variety of different people, it ended up going down. We also have some headlines right here of Israel hitting more targets in Iran. Let's pull this up, and then we'll keep going from there.
And guys, we learned this morning that 4 U.S. service members have died so far in Iranian attacks, 3 killed over the weekend and 1 succumbing to wounds received this morning. And the Pentagon confirmed that 3 U.S. fighter jets have been shot down, not apparently by Iranian fire, they said. It's a possible friendly fire incident involving an allied nation, but the air crews were able to eject safely, and they are reported to be in stable condition. Guys, back over to you.
Amy, let me just ask you, while you're here, I don't want to conflate oil with the deaths you just talked about. Obviously, with the families, we have condolences, but the president has historically thought about the kinds of things like oil. He's thought about the market. I don't expect him to think about it this weekend. That would be wrong. But is anyone talking about the idea that if oil goes up big, then perhaps there's inflation, and if inflation comes back, then we're not going to be able to cut rates?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, Jim. I mean, I can tell you that the president thinks about oil and energy as the #1 input to the economy, and his entire sort of economic policy is focused on the idea of drill, baby, drill, getting oil prices as low as possible, lower even than some of the oil companies want it to go, in order to keep that input to the economy as low as possible and then keep the economy thriving. That's the way Donald Trump looks at the economy. Cheap oil equals a good economy. That was, in large part, the argument for the Venezuela operation that the president engaged in earlier this year, which was that the United States will get a big chunk of the Venezuelan oil revenue, and Venezuelan oil reserves would flow into the rest of the economy and not to hostile countries. The president has looked at sort of oil as the lifeblood of the global economy as well, and geopolitics. So this, obviously, at least in the short term, runs counter to that with the spike in oil prices that we saw over the weekend, which was, of course, very predictable as you're thinking about launching a military operation like this. And clearly the president concluded that it's worth paying that price in the short term to achieve his objectives in Iran in the long term.
Right, which we're still wondering.
All right, that's what we got with Israel hitting more targets in Iran. It doesn't seem like that headline is going to stop popping up. And once again, the implications on oil and affordability, I think, are a really big deal. Again, Trump did run on the idea that we would make the country more affordable, and oil prices have come down substantially, which has implicated gas prices. If those spike up and continue to stay spiked up, which I don't think they will, I think it's going to be a short-term thing, but if they do stay spiked up, inevitably, everyone is going to feel that at the pump or at the airline. American Airlines right there, down 6.5%. I just forgot. I realized that while he was talking, yeah, the airlines are probably going to get hit. United Airlines down 6.5% as well. The reason for that being fuel costs will go up, and that could obviously impact prices for tickets. Delta's down 5.8%, and Southwest is also down 4.5%. So if you think oil prices rebound quickly, the airlines could be a very reasonable trade, because the only reason they're down is because of oil prices. But if they continue to stay elevated, yeah, those are likely going to continue to stay down and not easily rebound unless oil prices also come down. Next decade right there, that's up 13%. VG, that's up 15%. Nvidia, once again, down 1.6%. Nvidia invested in 2 companies this morning. For those that missed it, Lumentum, that's up 7%, and Coherent, that is also up 6%. So Nvidia, once again, spreading out more money, gaining more equity stakes, deciding that instead of buying back their stock, they would rather be able to have a stake in the different companies that are part of this AI ecosystem. And as a result, it looks like that's the strategy that Nvidia is going forth with. MicroStrategy bought another 3,000 Bitcoin this morning for $204 million. So even in the midst of a geopolitical massive potential war, Saylor's buying the dip, and he is not going to stop buying the dip. So 204 million, 3,015 Bitcoin is what you got from Michael Saylor. Quite frankly, Bitcoin has been holding up. I thought Bitcoin would get hit even worse, and it's not getting hit as much as I thought it would get hit. Fell to like 63 late on Friday night, Saturday morning, and since then it's actually been up, which is doing okay. Lockheed Martin, that's also up in the pre-market, 5.4%, up about $35, and then Raytheon is up as well, 5.3%. Now, obviously, Palantir, whenever this type of stuff happens, tends to get a bit of a breakout. It's up 3% right there. And some of the pictures that the White House posted over the weekend, you can see Maven, which is the Maven smart system that if you invest in Palantir, you understand is one of the most important operating systems for the DOW, the Department of War, really is becoming the backbone of defense for the entire government. That was shown in the background. I mean, you could see that they were using Palantir Maven smart systems. So obviously, Palantir played a role here, just like they played with Venezuela. I think the Wall Street Journal reported over the weekend that Claude, ironically, even though the Department of War wants to get rid of them because they feel they're anti-American, had to end up using Claude to conduct this entire operation inside of Palantir software. So yeah, Palantir's getting a gap up. My only fear right here is that if high growth beta is taking a hit, which it is, you look at Robinhood, you look at SoFi, you look at Rocket Lab, etc. Palantir's in that same bucket, but Palantir is also a defense name. So at 9:30, the market's going to have to grapple with, do we want to treat Palantir more as a defense name, or do we want to treat Palantir more as a high beta growth name? And if it goes down, it'll be put in that high beta growth bucket. If it goes up, it'll be put in that sort of Lockheed Raytheon bucket. But I think it's one or two of scenarios that happens for Palantir. That stock right now getting the benefit up about 3.1%. Tom Lee bought another 50,000 of Ethereum last week. He now holds 4,473. BMNR is also kind of flat in the pre-markets. Again, I did not think crypto would be able to hold up as well as it is. It's not like crypto is doing an amazing job, but you're not seeing like 10,000 candles down to the downside, which to me is actually kind of encouraging. And maybe it's the market going not risk on, but pricing in enough of the risk off that has already happened. We'll see when the market opens, but so far those are not getting hit too bad. Ethereum right there, just at 1,900. ASTS, they have earnings today. That's down 2.3%. The Qs are down 1.4. Rocket Lab's down 3. Amazon's down 2. Meta's down 2. And Micron is down 2.78%. Yep, Northrop Grumman, that is also up in the pre-markets. NOC, that stock up another 5%. Apple introduces iPad Air powered by the M4 chip. I don't think any of these Apple announcements are actually going to be that important, to be honest. The big thing was the iPhone 17 last year. A lot of this stuff is just stuff they kind of have to put out as a new upgrade. So you have the iPad Air, you have the iPhone 17e. Those seem like the two biggest announcements so far. And I think we're getting an Apple event on Thursday or Wednesday. So we'll see how they talk more about this as well. AMD also down in the pre-markets. I think all your semi names, unfortunately, are getting hit because they also have a level of beta to them that's associated with high beta growth. AMD right there, 194. That's down 3%. Broadcom has earnings. It's a sucky week to present earnings for a lot of these names. Broadcom right there at 309. It fell to 295 at the lows of February 5th. It's not too far away from that. So maybe you got to rip the Band-Aid off and see if that goes further. But Broadcom down 3%, 309.60. That one again was at 420. So it's just got a lot of moves to make for things to get back to normal. The drone stocks also catching a bid. Ondas right there. That is also up 4.6%. Red Cat, that is also up 8.54%. Kratos was up last night. Kratos is up another 7% right here. So drones, oil, defense are the three obvious areas that the market is trying to rotate into. I think those trades are a little crowded right now, given the time to really hedge with them or get into them was Friday, not the day where the strike happens and now everyone's piling into them. But if the extent of the war feels like it's going to continue, then the market probably continues to pile into them. It's just usually these trades on geopolitical controversies happen for like a week and then it's done. We don't really have that many classic examples over the past 3 years of a headline of geopolitical war or some type of strike happening, and then you buy a stock and it actually ends up performing the way you think it's going to perform. It happens for a little bit, and then it kind of goes back to normal. As investors are pretty quick to rotate out of it. I mean, we literally have evidence of Lockheed Martin being up 15% last night. Now it's up 5%. So you've already had people take their profits on this that bought it on Friday, and the question is, will that continue? France, they're expanding their nuclear deterrence in Europe. Macron said France could deploy nuclear assets abroad for the first time under a new forward deterrence strategy amid rising security concerns in Europe. The plan includes closer cooperation with countries such as Germany and Poland with certain potential temporary deployments and joint military exercises. France would retain full control over its nuclear arsenal. This shift reflects growing uncertainty about a U.S. security support and heightened tensions following Russia's war in Ukraine. The scariest thing about everything that has happened over the weekend, and I am hoping and truly, truly hoping and praying that this doesn't happen. But, a lot of different geopolitical experts have come out and said the way you get a nuclear war is by starting with Iran, because Russia and China then get involved. They try to protect Iran. If they try to protect Iran at all by securing them with nukes, the United States gets involved, and then potentially someone has their finger on the trigger, and you end up heading into a nuclear war. I doubt that happens. I think there's enough safeguards in place to be able to make that to not happen. But I mean, that would not be, it's hard to buy the dip when you're like being blown away and your body's disintegrating right in front of you because of a nuke being dropped. So I don't think it goes that far. I don't think that happens. That's always been one of the fears, is that when you start something like this and it actually ends up scaling, now that we have nuclear weapons, it's not 2003 anymore. We're in just a different geopolitical time frame. But I think the rationale around what it means to actually pull the trigger on the nuke, every world leader, as crazy as they are, Xi, Putin, and Trump, they understand that that is kind of the end of humanity, or at least a decent possibility for humanity to not have a chance to continue. And hopefully that's what stops us from going that far. But, this stuff is scary. And when you see this stuff happening back and forth, you have a lot of people start to theorize on how this ends up playing out. Are you buying anything here, Amit, or just waiting? So put in the chat what your kind of frame of reference here, and if you are buying or not buying anything right here. To be honest, the trades to be made, once again, I feel we're on Friday. I just feel like chasing a Raytheon or a Lockheed or an Ondas today, or a Lumentum after they got an Nvidia announcement, after this thing is up 150% year to date, is not the right move. I don't think chasing the geopolitical war trades makes sense. I think on Friday, hedging with buying oil futures makes a lot more sense. I once again continue to be interested in this Nvidia dip. I mean, this is the largest company on the planet that is now trading at its historical 5-year bottom on the PE. If it doesn't bottom here and we actually start to see the PE continue to contract, then we're just in a whole new territory for Nvidia that we haven't seen over the past 5 years, given this is historically around this range where it should bottom based on a PE basis. So, I mean, as boring as it is, once again, I think that Nvidia is the play here. And the broader question is going to be, does the market want to recognize any level of that earnings growth? Or does the market continue to be upset about CapEx potentially not growing, geopolitics? Does all of that justify Nvidia being traded at those multiples? Morgan Stanley doesn't think so. They moved Nvidia back to their top pick in semis. It used to be Micron. Now it's Nvidia. They write, for the last 2 quarters, Nvidia has not moved while business has continued to strengthen, a function of concerns about the durability of current growth. Those concerns should turn to 2027 enthusiasm in the coming months. We see the stock trading at 18 times EPS as a surprisingly good entry point. I just think it should be pretty simple to get Nvidia. But I also think a lot of these other names, I don't think it's crazy to imagine we have a pretty epic V-shaped rally as we get into March and April. Now, again, I think around May, the whole sell in May, go away thing actually could play true this cycle. That didn't happen last year because April is when you got the Liberation Day crisis and May was a bit of recovery. But I think that could happen here. And so we'll worry about April and May when we get there. But in terms of March, are we taking Nvidia to 150? Are we taking Rocket Lab to 40? Are we taking Coinbase down to 100? Are we really getting to those levels of multiples when the growth they've all put up has been pretty damn reasonable? Maybe, if the market really wants to price in that level of destruction, but I just don't see that as that reasonable. And in about 4 minutes, we'll see how the market is thinking of pricing that in as well. Rocket Lab, Cantor Fitzgerald raised their Rocket Lab price target to $85, maintaining an overweight target. Rocket Lab, they did have a decent earnings, but again, this one got hit in that high beta bucket. Same thing with ASTS, they'll have earnings after the bell. Rocket Lab down 3.7%. Silver and gold are selling off. Is that correct? That is correct. Look at these charts. Wow. Once again, this is why I cannot in good faith chase silver or own it. I'll deal with the volatility of Nvidia. I'm not dealing with the volatility of silver. Think about all the people that bought silver last night at 96, 97, thinking that is their hedge against geopolitical volatility, down 5%. Now, maybe it goes up 5%. But at this point, I don't think these assets are being used as a safe haven. I think these assets are being used as speculation. These things are not supposed to go up or down 4.5% every day, which is what's been happening. And to me, that means all the metals, there might be a long-term thesis, but the speculative nature of it just makes it a bit more volatile than any. And if I'm buying volatility, I might as well buy equities where I can actually see cash flows and earnings growth over just macro central banks potentially holding on to more of them as my thesis. Gold right there also declining. It was almost at 5,500 last night, now at 5,300. So both of those getting hit on the day. I also think the value stocks, which caught a bid last night, the Cokes, Verizons, etc., those are red in the pre-market as well. And so when the value names start going red with the growth names, to me, that's actually a bullish signal for growth because it means the rotation into value, which last night Coke was up 2%, probably is not as relevant as much. And maybe you're getting a bit closer to the bottom. Walmart was up last night. Walmart is now down in the pre-market. Now, maybe in 2 minutes when the market opens, Walmart, Coke, Verizon, all these names get bid up and Nvidia falls down another 5%. But if you don't see that, then I think we're closer than not to the market trying to say, okay, we're done with February and maybe some of these growth stocks are probably a better buy than not. The VIX is up 17%. That is correct. So we're going to need to see the VIX either take a bit of a beating when the market opens or if it continues to spike up. The last time the VIX had a massive 25-30% day, I think was early February when you have the beginning of the SaaS Armageddon. So if we match those levels, then okay, we're at 2340 right now. If not, then hopefully that's the extent of it in the pre-market. What do you think about IGV? Retail is buying a lot of IGV. Retail volumes on software in general are at their highest levels in over a decade. So if you are buying software, you are basically going with the consensus retail trade on software. Trading volumes, again, at the highest levels in over a decade when it comes to IGV. I do think software is closer than not to the bottom. Then again, there's a lot of controversy around exactly if software is going to be able to maintain their multiple expansion and growth. But many of these names are down 30 to 40%. So maybe not buying the entire index, maybe picking a specific name inside of software, but the software names are obviously on discount. And the question is, will the market re-rate those multiples even back to half of where they were a couple of years ago? All right, here we go, folks. Thank you all for being here. It is Monday, March 2nd. We are in a brand new world, and we're going to see how the market ultimately reflects that. 9:30 a.m., the stock market is now open. All right, wake your ass up. Let's get into it. Nvidia is down 1.25% on the day. Broadcom is down 3.75%. AMD, she looks like she wants to go below 190. That is down 5% on the day. Palantir gaps up. That's up 3% on the day. Delta's down 4. United's down 6. Southwest is down 2. American down 7. Obviously, all your airlines, because of increased fuel costs, are taking a hit right here. Lockheed Martin is up 4. Raytheon is up 3. That's the lowest level of green that they've seen in the past 24 hours. Both of those were up substantially more. So you do have people, you see those red candles right there, taking profits on some of their defense names. Coherent, that's up 6.7%. Again, NVIDIA did invest $2 billion into them. And Light is up 9.85%. NVIDIA also invested $2 billion into Lumentum. Those two stocks going green. Microsoft goes green, 393. You have KKR, that's down another 3%. Private equity names continue to struggle. BlackRock, that's down 2.6%. Morgan Stanley upgraded CrowdStrike to 570, named them a overweight top pick. That stock is up 2% right here as CrowdStrike tries to catch a bit of a bid. It was down 10% last week. AMD at 193. Nvidia goes green. Nvidia goes green right there, 177.62. Not sure if we can fully trust it, but at least that initial decline, this thing was hitting 173 in the pre-markets is reversing right here. AMD as well got a little bit of a green candle from 190 to 193. Maybe that reverses as well. Rocket Lab also getting a green candle right there, 67.91. Coca-Cola going red. So you're seeing some of the value names fall off a cliff while some of the growth names are trying to attempt to make a recovery. Adobe, that's down 0.5%. Salesforce is down 0.5%, but that's still trying to get a green candle. Nebius down 3%. It was worse in the pre-market. Robinhood was at 73. Robinhood's now at 74.70. Not too bad. Ondas up 11.5. Your drone stocks catching a bid. You have Aero Environment that is also up 15%. Viavi, that's up 4%. Kratos up 5% as well. So you've got some of the growth names getting a little bit more attention. We are going to get some macro data in about 20 minutes, and we'll see how the market reacts to that with ISM services and PMI. But the Iranian war is kind of the big topic for the market this week. Wow, Bank of America down another 2%, MasterCard down 1%, Visa down 1%. Your financials still getting hit, unfortunately. JP Morgan is down 2% right there. So financials not necessarily getting any level of recovery. SoFi is down 3%, 17.24, but that is trying to recover from 16.90, which it was in the pre-markets. VG, she's green, 20% on the day. For VG, 1165, more natural gas demand is allowing this one to see higher levels of excitement. How about Next Decade? They had earnings this morning. Next Decade up 18%. Next Decade was stuck around $5 for almost 9 months. And so the fact that that's getting a bid, definitely well-deserved because it's been consolidating for a long time. But obviously the events over the weekend is what's hypercharging that. HIMS is green as well. You got IGV trying to pump. HIMS right there, 1505. That's up 4%. Red Cat, another drone name, that is pumping 17% on the day. So people are piling into drones right now as a form of playing the war via defense. You've got obviously a lot of these Iran plays being expressed in the stock market through natural gas, Exxon, Chevron, and then drones. The defense contractors, not as much, but a company like Ondas and Red Cat catching a bid, pretty obvious. Palantir right there, 143.50. That is another way the market's expressing it. Their way to play this type of geopolitical event. That's up 5% right there. Lockheed's now up 4. Raytheon's up 4. Coherent up 7 based on that announcement. SMH is down 1.3% of the day. Nubank's down 3%. Financials continuing to get hit. IONQ Quantum, that is down 3% as well. CCJ, that is also up about 1%. As well. Wow, France offers to station nuclear weapons in Europe for the first time. Okay, Macron potentially having a fundamentally different paradigm for how France has thought about their nuclear weapon arsenal. They are offering to station weapons in Europe for the first time with their nukes. AMD right there, 194.73. That's still down 2.4%. Rocket Lab goes green. Goes green. Once again, this is what happens whenever a war breaks out or you have some type of big strike. The initial reaction is red, but usually the market prices it in and it moves on. And we've been through 4 of these in the past 2 years. And almost every time, like, you end up just not having it be as serious of a deal as what people expected. Nvidia, 179. If she can crack 180, this would be really nice to see. Now, again, it's only 5 minutes into the market, so this could obviously reverse, and maybe this is a bigger deal than expected. But the initial reaction is fading the dip to be as aggressive. Amazon is trying to go green, but that's one still down about 1.5%. Wow, Coinbase, what a recovery on Coin. 169 to almost 180 right here. Bitcoin's not even moving that much. Bitcoin is moving. Never mind. 65.2 to 66.1. Yeah, you got basically $1,000 candle right there. That definitely helped. Coinbase MicroStrategy should be up as well. MicroStrategy is up 2% on the day. EOSC, this one got hit by 50% last week. That one getting a little recovery. Now that's now up about 5%. Micron should be up. Micron is indeed up. How about SanDisk? That should be green. That is also green. There were a bunch of reports over the weekend that memory and DRAM prices are continuing to be raised, and suppliers feel that they have leverage, and buyers like Nvidia, Apple, two of the biggest buyers of memory, continue to pay whatever they need to pay. A, because it doesn't affect them. They have plenty of cash. But B, they need to secure inventory. And there was one report that came out over the weekend saying that Micron is selling out until the end of 2028 and getting purchase orders already for 2029 simply because of the demand that memory is showing. And so Micron has earnings soon. I mean, once again, they're probably going to show massive numbers. The question is going to be, will the market continue to give them momentum, or is the market going to think that the cyclical nature of it should be discounted? Paramount right there, that's down 1%. American Express, that's down 2%. Dollar General, that's down 0.5%. Applied Digital, that's down. Oracle, that's down. Iren is down. Your data center names are getting hit as well on the day. Corning, that stock is up 4%. That's another infrastructure play for AI. Got hit last week, now starting to recover. This one's had a great year. I think it's up a good chunk this year. CoreWeave also up. GLV, yep, that's up 74%. GLW Corning, as that's catching a bid. CoreWeave is green. Wow, they're going the opposite of Iren. CoreWeave 79.88. CoreWeave got hit by 30% last Thursday, so probably should be getting at least a little bit of recovery. Nvidia 179.70. Robinhood 76.37. The fact that Hood is moving as well, super risk on if you're getting Hood to move. The airlines also kind of recovering. They were down 7 to 8%. Now they're down about 4 to 6%. You're seeing a very slight bounce on those. S&P was at 676. It's at 682. Not bad. Down 0.5% is not that crazy. Google as well, 305, getting a little bit of a candle. And Apple trying to get back above 265. That's at 262 right now. I mean, the initial reaction from this strike is that maybe it's not going to be as bad as the market thinks. And even if it is, well, these stocks have already taken such a deep hit that they might not continue to be compressed. We're also done with February, so maybe a little bit of seasonality as we enter in March. And also, you did have the other reason why Nvidia probably sold off is you had a lot of end-of-month rebalancing that happened on Friday. So, I mean, in general, you probably have people just taking profits across the board, and that could have led to a little bit of a sell-off on Friday as well. Micron right there up about 1%. Bitcoin 66.1. MicroStrategy is up 2.2. Big Bear AI will have earnings after the bell. That's up 2%. ASTS will have earnings, so those are definitely two to watch out for. ASTS up 3.6 on the day. I imagine many portfolios just went green. I'm looking at my port. We just went green. We just went green on the day, which is kind of incredible, right? Given what we saw over the weekend, given what we saw last night, given what we saw 30 minutes ago in the pre-market. But many, many times, the war dips end up actually being dips to buy, or at least dips to not get scared about selling into. We saw this with Israel, Iran back in April of 2024. The S&P fell below 5,000 and recovered within a day. And then we saw this as early as 8 months ago in June with the 12-day war and the nuclear strikes on Iran. Like, we had 1 day of red and we kind of moved on. Maybe that is the same. Walmart goes red. Coke goes red. Let's see, Verizon, your value names. Verizon goes red. Market's obviously saying we don't want Verizon and Coke today. We want Nvidia. We want Hood. We want Palantir. We want these other names. How about Shopify? Is that catching a bid? Shop is down, unfortunately. I think that's more software related. IGV goes up. CRM goes slightly green. Let's look at software, see how everything's playing out there. We are green across the board except for Adobe, Oracle, Datadog, and Shopify. Those are your only three red. And it looks like they are about to go green. But Cloudflare, CrowdStrike, Zscaler, Intuit, Twilio, all of those are doing well. Wow, why is ELF down 9%? That's weird. What's the connection between Iran and ELF? I mean, maybe oil prices affect their business, but I don't think it's that dramatic. VIX went from being up 18% to being up 12%. So the VIX is falling, which is good. ELF right there down at 84. How about Ulta? Ulta is also down 2%. How about Estee Lauder? That stock is also down 3.4%. Palantir, are we going for 145? 140. Wow, we hit 144.89. You got to imagine Michael Burry is looking at Palantir just like, damn it, this freaking name. There's always something. There's always something. Sorry, Mr. Burry, but your eloquent Substack analysis is not enough sometimes to match Palantir's role in geopolitics. And that's why the stock gets the bid. 144.26. Not to say Palantir can't fall down. People can't eventually start selling it. Maybe it meets resistance, but the fact that it's gapping up right here is the market saying we don't give a shit about the valuation. We care about the fact that Palantir is involved in everything that is important when it comes to geopolitics. And as a result, it probably signals why this is a name that people should own more of. 143.73, that's up about 5%. IGV trying to go slightly green. Fear and greed. Are we at 38? We are at 38 and fear. So we're down from 42, which is where we were on Friday. So we are actually more in fear, although some of your biggest growth stocks are green today, which signals that the broadening out of other parts of the market are going red. Why is AMD getting crushed? I actually don't know. AMD should be recovering in a more healthy way with Nvidia. Not saying AMD has to go green, but it shouldn't be down 4% right here. Then again, I think Nvidia is just getting a little too cheap. I really wonder how cheap are they going to let Nvidia get before people step in. At the end of the day, it's a stock market, and a stock market that quite literally cares about growth at all costs. That's what Nvidia is giving you, and they'll pay up for growth. I mean, this is a market that absolutely will pay up for growth. So if you're going to give growth at an incredible discount, I mean, if you're going to pay 200 times earnings for Tesla's growth, which there is none, like literally there's no growth, and you're going to pay 16 times for Nvidia's 80% growth, at some point it gets too cheap. And I wonder if that's why it's reversing. MasterCard, that's down 0.5%. Visa also reversing green. Potentially the financials coming back into place. AEHR, I think, is running with all the semis. That's up 11%. They had a really good earnings last week. Shout out to Roy. He's been talking. I'm actually going to see him this week. He's going to be with me at the Robin event. This name has done very, very well for him. It's up 100%. And yeah, they had a great earnings, and you're seeing some of the smaller players in the semi space get some momentum. Wow, 180 on Nvidia. We touched it. 180. We touched it. Trump to mention Iran at an 11 a.m. event at the White House. Okay, we'll see if that event is going to be live. If it's not going to be live, then we'll wait for the quotes from the White House. But Trump will be speaking today, as per ABC News, at 11 a.m. And we'll see whatever remarks he makes as well. Do we have Tom on CNBC? Is he talking? Let's see what Mr. Lee is saying. Nope, he's not live right now. I think he's going to be live in a bit. However, we do have an update on Qatar and LNG production that seems to unfortunately be stopping based on a strike in Iran. Let's get this update, and then we'll keep going.
Focus as it should. Oil is up, although not up as much as some of the more fearful projections that were out there. Some oil stocks are up a couple of percent, but I want to pivot very quickly because the story today has quickly evolved into natural gas. And here's why. Iranian drones hitting Qatar Energy. Now, Qatar is a country that is the largest liquefied natural gas producer in the world. And all of it goes through the Strait of Hormuz. And about 2 hours ago, Qatar state-owned energy company, Qatar Energy, saying that as of right now, and we don't know how long this will last, and that is critical. We don't know how long it will last, but right now, all LNG production is offline. So effectively, 20 to 30% of the world's liquefied natural gas production, guys, is offline as of now. Will it last an hour, a day, a week? We don't know, but there's your story to watch. There are U.S. stock impacts as well. Look at Cheniere Energy, ticker LNG. Look at Venture Global. They also had earnings out this morning.
Look at that. Venture Global getting the mention, primetime on CNBC. There you go. VG, LNG, natural gas. That's what's getting some of the pump in those names. VG up 20% right now.
Ticker VG. Those stocks are up. In fact, Venture Global stock is up nearly 20%. Some of that could be earnings. But again, if you're taking Qatari Energy offline, then U.S. cargoes from Corpus Christi or from Calcasieu Paris, Louisiana, Houston, wherever it may come from, those cargoes are now worth a lot more money. Venture Global is up 17.5%. So obviously oil is the story. Natural gas continues to be the story. And when we talk about oil, we want to look at one thing. There's one web page that I'm sort of glued to outside of course, CNBC.com and the live blog that we ran all weekend, guys, which is the map of the Strait of Hormuz. That's it. So we're looking at marine traffic by Kepler. The red dots, those are liquid tankers. An arrow means it's underway. A dot basically means it's at anchor. You can see in the top part, there is nothing, no red in the Strait of Hormuz, the narrowest part there at the peak. If we begin to see ships go through there, and at some point they will have to, whether it's with a naval escort or some sort of ceasefire agreement, because right now the insurers are saying, no thanks. Once we start to see ships go through that port, that hole, whatever you want to call it, then we will see the price of oil and natural gas probably come down a bit. But right now it's not closed, guys. I don't like that term because it's not a canal. There's no gate. There's no lock on it. But yet it's too dangerous or too expensive to go through. JP Morgan very quickly out was saying 4 things to watch with oil. Number 1, the number of barrels disrupted, the length of time of the disruption. Does the Trump administration do anything around the SPR? Remember that, Strategic Petroleum Reserve. And of course, the question nobody can answer, Carl, what comes next?
So oil being the biggest beneficiary in terms of prices, and obviously natural gas also from what has been going on right here. We are still green across the board. Tesla ended up going red, but it is rebounding from 388 now to 397. And as a result, VG, which did indeed have good earnings this morning, that's up 20%. Next Decade, that is up 7% right there. And then you have XLE in general that is catching a bid. Once again, I do think that trying to pile into energy for this trade after the names are up 10 to 15% is not the easiest trade. I mean, it feels like it's easy because obviously we should have oil prices continue to spike, but that's when, those trades end up going in the opposite direction. So I don't know. I would give it at least a day. I would at least try to see what exactly is happening in the Strait of Hormuz over the coming weeks, or at least coming days, before heavily piling into energy. But if you're already in energy, maybe you don't need to sell. Yeah, taking profits here would be cool, but maybe this is a situation that at least creates a new base for VG. I mean, VG was stuck between $89. Maybe now it's going to be stuck between $10 and $11. And if you're long on this, then, your stake is up and you don't have to worry about it kind of falling back to those low levels. Oracle right there also catching a bid, 145, as that one is now starting to go green. Ondas also catching a bid. That does have a heavy short float. I mean, some of these names, Red Cat, Ondas, they might be potentially getting a bit of a squeeze. But once again, if people are buying this just because they think we're going to get into this multi-year war with Iran and Ondas and Red Cat are going to get all these purchase orders from the U.S. government to be able to buy drones, what if that doesn't happen? Right? The counter perspective is, what if this thing is done in a couple weeks and, Ondas and Viavi and Kratos don't see these massive levels of demand? Now, what if they do? Then, yeah, this is probably justified. If not, then jumping into the trade and not knowing if there's actually going to be that much demand for a new product might not be the easiest trade to make money on after it's rallied so much. Nvidia right there, 179.80. S&P, not green yet, but man, she's trying. She is indeed trying. 683 up from 676 in the pre-market. Circle, is that one going green? Circle, wow, up another 7%. This one had a great earnings. Tons of analysis on the stablecoin usage going higher. Super bullish for Ethereum. Bitcoin right there, almost 67. Bitcoin basically giving you a $2,000 candle from the lows right here. And lows meaning literally like 10 minutes ago. There it is, 67,000. That is definitely helping your proxies. BMNR, that's up 4. Hoodie, that is almost break even. Coinbase, 178. MicroStrategy is green. Who would have thought? Your risk on names going back to risk on. Maybe it's a head fake, but if it's not a head fake, if it's the market pricing in the risk off mentality and pivoting, then boom, we might be seeing a bit more momentum right here. PMI, we just got that 5 minutes ago. Let me pull that up. It was 51.6 versus 51.2. 51.6 versus 51.2. That's global manufacturing PMI. That is not bearish. I think we're going to get some more PMI in about 10 minutes. Yeah, global manufacturing PMI, 51.6 versus 51.2. We're going to get ISM employment, new orders, prices, and PMI in the next 10 minutes, and we'll see if those end up not being bad either. Defense Secretary Hegseth argues the goal in Iran isn't regime change, adding the conflict is not comparable to the endless Iraq war. I think that's a bit conflicting with what Trump said over the weekend, who explicitly said that we wanted a new regime. Now, maybe the wording is semantics, but they definitely want people in power in Iran that are A, chosen by the citizens of Iran, and B, willing to cooperate and work with the United States. That seems to be the unofficial / official stance of the United States government. The question becomes, how do they get that? And I think that's why Trump was also, making the plea to Iranian citizens to say, go take over your government. We're going to kill the bad guys. Now you guys have to go out and like have a revolution, which is a hell of a thing to say. And the spirit of the Iranian people, given the protests we've seen over the past couple of months, definitely signals they would want to do that. The question is, will it play out that way? That's kind of a utopian scenario, right? That the people just overthrow the government and the bad guys are gone. And then boom, you have this brand new government. Maybe that's how it happens. But if it doesn't, I think that's where we're going to have more questions than answers. Again, Farzad, who is Iranian, he will be on the market close. We'll get his perspective on how he's thinking this ends up playing out. And so after we cover the earnings today, he'll hop on the show and we'll try to see what he's saying. AAOI, I know this ticker's been getting a lot of attention. It was up 35% in the pre-markets. Now it's up 14%. So that one taking a bit of a breather, but being up 14% is not too bad. That is getting the derivative benefit of Nvidia investing in Lumentum and Coherent. Lumentum was up 7, now it's up 2. So that trade kind of going the opposite direction. And Coherent was up 7, now it's up 5. That one holding on to a little bit of its pump. And Yahoo quote, the aim is also to create conditions for a regime change. Yeah, exactly. I mean, even if Hegseth's saying we don't want a regime change, functionally, what Israel and the United States wants are a regime change. And, the question will be if we get it. Coinbase right there, 181, that's up 3. And then you got Hoodie at 75.80. Let me know where everyone was when they found out about this. I'm sure a lot of people woke up in the morning on Saturday and found out. I was up Friday night. I think the strike happened at around 12:30, 1 a.m. And then I stayed up till 4 a.m. Monitoring the situation because that's what I do. I monitor the situation. But put in the chat, where were you? Like when did you even find out that all this stuff happened? And I guess what was your initial reaction when you end up seeing this happen? I was eating my Grab pizza delivery in the jungles of Thailand. Okay, that's that's not the worst way to find out about this. I was on the toilet. I woke up and I saw your post. Your sleep score must be hell. Yeah, I need to fix it. It's not the best. I was sleeping. I was in the gym in Munich. I was in bed. I was monitoring the situation from the toilet. I was drinking a cup of tea. I forgot the instant coffee today, guys, by the way. That's how I don't really care about coffee because I don't really need my cup of joe in the morning. I was ready to do the show today. I was like, all right, we got a lot to talk about. Let's get into it. I didn't need any extra source of energy. I'm just here and I'm ready for it. S&P 682. That's down 0.5%. All right, most of you guys are saying you were sleeping. Yeah, so I think a lot of people woke up to it. And, and then if you woke up to it early in the morning, it was rumored that the supreme leader had been killed. And then, Iran came out and said, no, he's not killed. He's going to give a speech in a couple hours. That speech ended up never happening because he ended up getting killed. So as soon as you woke up, not only had the operation happened, but the main target of the operation had also been identified. Circle right there. That's up 8% on the day, cracking through 90. How about Microsoft? Are we pushing 400? Not yet at 395, but still going green. Nvidia right there, 179.50. Micron, barely green, but still green on the day at 412. All right, let's pull up a couple of other pieces of updates and see what we've got going on. Two things I think that also happened over the weekend that were kind of under the radar, which, there was a variety of different elements to kind of how you analyze this. One was one of our biggest shipping giants, which I'm probably going to say the name wrong, Maersk, saying it's suspending all transits through the Strait of Hormuz. So again, the Strait of Hormuz is not closed, but you do have some shipping giants saying that they are going to, take a more cautious approach to being able to ship through it. And then second, which was also important, Nvidia ended up partnering with global telecom leaders commit to build 6G on open and secure AI native platforms. So whether it's Nokia, AT&T, Verizon, SoftBank, Telecom, ODC, Cisco, Booz Allen, you're having a bunch of these companies start to partner with Nvidia for the idea of introducing 6G wireless networks and overall 6G infrastructure to create a better foundation for the world's future connectivity. Two headlines that kind of went on the radar, definitely have global implications for internet demand and for NVIDIA, but obviously the straight up from boost stuff I think is the most important. Nokia, again, does have an equity stake from Nvidia. They now own Nebius, CoreWeave, Nokia, Coherent, Lumentum, and I think 2 others. They did sell out of their Applied Digital. Synopsys is another one. So Nokia right there up 3%. Nvidia is kind of becoming this Berkshire of technology. And if they take stakes in the hyperscalers, which I think would be a no-brainer at these valuations for them to buy a little bit of Microsoft and Meta and all those companies, that might also be something that is beneficial for Nvidia. How are the cruise lines doing? How are they doing? CCL is, wow, what? Well, yeah, oil prices. Carnival down 11%. NCLH down 12%. Royal Caribbean down 7%. Yeah, oil prices definitely not the best for the airlines or the cruise lines. But the airlines are starting to recover. The cruise lines just look like they're at their local bottoms right here. So once again, these guys getting hit on this. Nvidia, once again, trying to push 180 as well. SoFi, I have no idea why this stock continues to get hit. Noto could buy shares today. It's after March 1st. That was the quiet period. So if you do see a buy from Noto after hours today, it would be the first day where he's allowed to buy shares, which would be nice to see. Question is if he's going to actually end up buying Tesla right there at $3.95. And again, on that podcast he did with Tanner, he said he would be willing to buy shares at, I think it was 22 at the time. Shares are at 17. So you might have him be very excited and eager to buy more of that stock. Again, we'll get PMI in about 2 minutes. We'll see what that looks like. We already saw services, or we already saw manufacturing PMI, and that was a beat. Now we'll get services. Nvidia right there at 179.50. Microsoft at 397. Netflix, they got the $2.8 billion on Friday from Paramount. Imagine waking up and your bank account has $3 billion for doing nothing. But they did get it. Netflix right there, 96.90. It looks inevitable. This thing wants to go back to 100. And I mean, look, if you bought in around the low 70s, mid 70s on the idea that they wouldn't end up buying Warner Brothers, you crushed it. Like, it's that simple. If you felt that this is not going to happen, and you had a lot more due diligence suggesting that Larry Ellison was going to be hell-bent on getting Warner Brothers, then boom, there's your trade. 75 to 97, and expect this thing probably to get back into that $100 range now that the overhang is on. The broader question is, how is Netflix going to grow subscribers? Because again, subscriber growth has slowed down significantly. It's not really their fault. They've become a big company. A lot of the world is subscribed to Netflix, but you can always get more subscribers, and to get more subscribers, you need more content. They're not going to get any of the Warner Brothers content, so they once again will have to go back to the drawing board and figure out how much content can they actually create together. Let me pull up the heat map as well. Let's see how green or red we are. I mean, we're still red, but it's not as ugly. Yeah, Red Cat's up 30% on the day as well. Again, that's another drone play. You got all your value names getting hit. You got big tech still down, even though it's not down as much. Nvidia and Microsoft and Palantir are your 3 real green names in tech. Financials down, healthcare down. Software, once again, continues to go down. And then consumer defensives kind of getting hit as well. Microsoft, Nvidia, and Palantir different. Why is Broadcom red, Nvidia green? Once again, I think Nvidia just got way too cheap. At some point, the market recognizes that things cannot be as cheap for the level of quality and growth that you're getting. Broadcom is cheap, but it's not Nvidia cheap, right? I think the forward PE is around 35. Nvidia's forward PE is around 18. So that is a bit of a difference. But Broadcom trying to recover right here. It was almost at 305. Now it's at 313. Getting a little bit of a reversal. Wix launches an app in ChatGPT, expanding website creation to one of the world's leading conversational AI platforms. Is Wix getting a bit off that? Wix is getting a slight bit off that. That's 3%. I think they have earnings tomorrow. And then we'll see what we get for Wix. PMI, okay, it's out. 52.4 versus 51.5. That's a miss. Prices paid 70.5 versus 59. That's a miss. New orders 55.8. Employment 48.8. Some of these are okay. Some of these are a little not as expected, but very, very slight misses if there is any miss. How's the S&P reacting? S&P 682. Trying to go slightly green. Let's pull up these numbers right here. Silver, yes, is down 5%.
0.4. And if we look at prices paid. We'd rather have these go down, but zoom, 70.5, well ahead of the 60-ish. We're looking for 59 in the rearview mirror. 70.5 would be the warmest since June of 22. And if we look at new orders, 55.8, better than expectations, but lacking in terms of sequential. 57.1 in the rearview mirror. 55.8 would be the weakest since Dec of last year when we were sub 50 at 47.4. And if we look at employment on a week where it's very key, we get the big jobs report this week. Well, 48.3 expected, 48.8 better than expected, and 48.1 in the rearview mirror. So it's better than expected. It's better than the rearview mirror. Here's the problem. It's the 29th consecutive month under 50. Interest rates are moving up. Parallel shift on the yield curve. The short end and the long end are each down about 8 basis points. Sarah, back to you.
Okay, Rick, thank you very much. Rick Santelli. So where do we look on a day like today? You have to start in the energy market because that is driving a lot of the price action and a lot of the concerns about the economic impact of this war. Look at Brent crude oil, for instance. That's the global benchmark. It is surging. Gas prices, especially in Europe, surging as well after Qatar made that announcement that they would be pausing. Remember, Qatar is a big gas supplier to Europe. What the market is telling you is that this is going to hurt inflation, the consumer discretionary travel stocks under pressure a lot this morning. You know, Wolf Research put out a pretty good analysis. They cited the Federal Reserve's FRB U.S. model for $20 increase in energy prices. For every $20 increase, you see a 7 basis point hit to the level of real GDP and nearly 40 basis point boost to headline CPI. Year over year. So they actually put out a projection of what, say, a $20 increase in oil prices would mean for CPI, for inflation. And you can see, I mean, there's an elevated effect for, you know, the better part of the year. If this sustains Q2, Q3, Q4, we're talking about almost 0.4% increases in overall CPI. They say general rule of thumb is for every $1 barrel increase in crude, there's a rise in gas prices of 2 to 2.5 cents per gallon. In other words, consumer feels it.
Yeah. Meantime, the Journal is putting together some numbers on core PCE for January, which is already before any of this ever happened. If you look at the inputs from CPI, the inputs from PPI, which was hot on Friday, you'd be looking at the hottest core PCE since March of 24, roughly, at 3.1.
I know. I mean, the question is what happens to the progress that we've seen, or at least the stabilization of it.
You know, the thing about PCE, and it's a good point that they're bringing up, inflation's getting hotter across the board, no matter how much you try to deny it. Now, the true inflation numbers, S&P going for its highest level of the day, 684 right there, is showing a different perspective. The problem is the BLS numbers are showing a perspective that tells the Fed that we cannot cut rates based on how we're understanding PCE, CPI, and PPI come together. The only one that's been good is CPI. The other ones have been, you know, pretty bad, to say the least. And so if you're not getting a sort of catastrophic fall in the labor market, and you are getting a broader increase in the inflation sector of how the Fed looks at their dual mandate, you end up getting a probability that goes to the lowest it's been in months, 2.5%, folks, on March. Obviously, because if oil prices are higher, that's probably going to lead to some more inflation. So I think the idea of getting a rate cut before Powell is gone is something we really should not think is possible unless we have massive, massive losses in the labor market, which we're seeing anecdotally, but you know, the market's not necessarily pricing that in, or at least the Fed is not pricing that in any significant way. Nvidia right there, 180, there it is, finally cracking above it, 180.20. Also getting an update right here, Spain has banned the U.S. from using its military bases for operations in Iran. Details: Spain has condemned the U.S. attacks on Iran. Flight radar data shows U.S. planes leaving Spanish bases. 9 tankers were seen departing the air base in southern Spain. U.S. aircrafts are headed towards Germany and France. This is per Reuters. Wow. That's quite incredible. Spain saying the United States is not allowed to use its military bases for operations in Iran. Looks like France and Germany are then stepping up. S&P 500 right there, 684. Zeta, are we green on Zeta? This one had a great earnings last week. Zeta trying to go green, almost 17. This one was almost $14 in the pre-markets as well. It's kind of crazy, right? You would think Spain is a pretty damn good ally of the United States. I mean, they can disagree with what's going on, but to stop the United States from even having access to its military bases, I mean, that's quite incredible. Did not expect to see that from Spain. I mean, all the European leaders that have come out and talked about this, they've not really condemned the attacks. If anything, they've cheered them on, and maybe not enthusiastically, but they've acknowledged the necessity of why the United States did what they did. But you didn't have the UK Prime Minister or the German PM come out and unequivocally say we condemn the US for doing this. China did come out and say that, but Europeans have been rather okay with at least accepting what the United States did. Nvidia, high of the day, baby. 180.3. 180.3. This thing got to 172 in the pre-market. Let's see if it reverses. HIMS is up 4%. Kratos up 10%. Again, your drone stocks catching the bid. Lockheed Martin now only up 4%. It was up 15% last night, so that one has been sold off. Apple almost going green, and then Google at 304. Yeah, SPY about to go green. That's kind of crazy, right? That's $14 away on the SPX from going green. Where's Fear and Greed? Fear and Greed, it was at 38. Now it's at 39. All right, so we're slightly getting higher. And we're not necessarily stuck in these levels. Bitcoin, 67.5. Dude, that's almost a $2,700 candle from the lows. I mean, that's not too bad considering what happened over the weekend. Here's an update as well for a potential War Powers Act being introduced this week in Congress.
Be briefed today by Secretaries Marco Rubio as well as Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. And then tomorrow we're expecting full briefings for the Senate and the House from those officials. After those briefings, we're expecting both chambers to vote on a war powers resolution. Now, that resolution would require Trump to get further congressional approval before any additional strikes in Iran. So far, we've already seen 3 Republicans say that they will vote for this War Powers Act because they want Congress to really exert its power in declaring war. Yet at the same time, you've got several Democrats who really support these strikes on Iran. They're going to be breaking their own ranks and voting against. A vote is really going to put all lawmakers on the record. It will be very key to watch. But even if the check on Trump's powers do pass both chambers, Trump can just veto this, and Congress lacks the vote to overcome a veto at this time. Meanwhile, a lot of lawmakers, they're looking to these briefings to try to provide some clarity on what comes next, how they might want to position themselves. Senator Mark Warner, he's the top Democrat on the Intelligence Committee, one of the few lawmakers who was actually briefed last week on Iran. He told MS Now's The Weekend that lawmakers don't understand why the strike happened when it did.
The story of why now seems to keep changing. Early in the week, it seemed like this was an attempt to go after Iran's nuclear capabilities. Then it moved into a discussion of Iran's ballistic missile capability that could strike our bases or Israel. And now it seems to have morphed into regime change. So all this means, in my mind, is that there was no imminent threat to America.
House lawmakers will also vote again this week to try to fund the Department of Homeland Security, which has been shut down for more than 2 weeks. Of course, the House has already passed the bill. The issue now is with the Senate. Not clear if the Senate's going to be doing a vote. We know that Senate Democrats and the White House have been exchanging paper, trying to get to a yes, but at this point, it doesn't sound like they're anywhere close. Scott?
Silver and gold getting hit on this news. Silver right here, now down about 4% on the day. Bitcoin almost 68, guys. Wow. So although there might be a War Powers Act that is introduced in Congress, as she was just talking about, and whether that vote succeeds or not could be vetoed by Trump, so it might not have any immediate impact, the market is completely ignoring any of that and saying, yeah, we're going to sell off silver right here, as you can see, and we're going to go back into the risk-on asset that has been left for dead, Bitcoin. 63 on Saturday night, now almost 68. If we can get back above 70, I mean, that would be very, very exciting to see. The Clarity Act also is a tailwind, but again, I don't think we're getting any progress on that until mid-April. So we do have some time, but any good piece of news on that could be beneficial. Nvidia, 180.4, 1.2% rebound right there. Netflix pushing 98. SoFi trying to break even on the day. The cruise lines are still getting hit pretty hard. But the crypto names, Robinhood, Coinbase, BMNR, all of them. Look at that. BMNR up 9% on the day. Circle up almost 14% on the day. Ondas up 20%. Your drone stock still pushing. VG up 17. Air Test Systems up 7. XLE up 1.9. You have lots of areas that are still giving you some love and are getting the benefit of the rotation. Microsoft, $399. That's green. Microsoft, $399 above 400 would be very nice. Elf, I still don't get why Elf is down. They didn't have earnings or something. Why the hell is Elf getting hit 3%? Yeah, I see 0 headlines on Elf, but that one going down. Wow, Shift4 founder purchases $13.5 million of stock. That's crazy. This stock took a nasty hit after earnings. Shift4 is up 2% right there. Yeah. Jared Isaacman bought 296,000 shares on February 27th. His average price is around 47. That's a pretty damn big insider buy, 13 million. Let's see if SoFi and Noto kind of follows that up today as well. 1768 on SoFi. Supreme Court steered clear of the politically charged fray over state voting rolls, rejecting 2 appeals from a conservative group that sought broader access to election data in Pennsylvania and Michigan. That's the next kind of big Supreme Court case, this voting law. And then what's the other thing? The Lisa Cook case, which is another thing that Trump is waiting to see. HBO Max and Paramount Plus will become one streamer officially after the acquisition closes, which again is not confirmed to close. Wow, Bitcoin, she's moving. She's moving. 68.2, busted through 68,000 right there. Look at that candle. 65.3 to 68.3. That's a $3,000 candle. As that's moving higher. Trump just said to CNN, we are about to hit them hard. The operation is progressing very well. The big wave hasn't happened yet, and it will come soon. Wow. Okay, that once again, that is Trump saying this is not over. And just because we got rid of the supreme leader, we have a lot more to do. I mean, Trump did acknowledge over the weekend in another video that he put out that Americans will die. And he was very explicit about it. He was very explicit about the fact that Americans will die. This is, I think his quote was, this is just how it is. And if he's saying, quote, the big wave hasn't happened yet and it will come soon, then yeah, I mean, it looks like this is not necessarily ending as quickly, but the market is pricing in a smooth end to it, even if that may not necessarily be the case. Trump is going to be addressing Iran at the White House in about 40 minutes. It looks like it's going to be public from what I'm seeing right here. If it is, then we'll get to see what he's saying. Bitcoin right there, 68.4. She's pushing even higher. Zeta goes green. S&P is probably going to go green with Bitcoin here. S&P is $1 away from going green, 685. Nvidia high of the day, 180.7. How about oil? Is that coming down? Oil is, yeah, Chevron's only up 2%. It was up a lot more. It was at 195. It's at 190. So again, you're seeing the consensus plays get sold off. They haven't gone red, but they're getting sold off. If they go red, we are fully risk on. If some of this stuff ends up just going red, that means the market's like, okay, that trade is done, and we're going back to what's undervalued, which ironically, what's undervalued is crypto and tech. You can make the case for it. Bitcoin, 68.5, still not stopping. Still not stopping here. Why is Nebius dumping low? You know, I don't really understand that. Nebius, you think it gets a bid with CoreWeave. Well, CoreWeave just went red. No, that's probably why. CoreWeave was at 80, now it's at 76. So it was trying to go green for the day. I ran is also slightly green. Nvidia moving higher, you'd think would maybe get the data centers to move up, but they're not. Again, they are just way more volatile than a name like Nvidia. Oracle as well, 147. As that is green. Do you sell Nebius? Yes, I sold a decent chunk of it to buy more Nvidia last week. I really didn't think selling at 104 would be the right move. Now, Nvidia also went down when I bought it, but Nebius got hit a lot worse. But there was no timing magic to that. There was just, hey, Nvidia's cheap. I want more Nvidia. Nonetheless, I think Nebius will recover. Again, Nebius' demand is based on overall AI compute demand. Same thing with Iran and CoreWeave. And based on the earnings that we got from all three, I mean, this is not slowing down. But unfortunately, the volatility of the broader markets in the data center space will cause back and forth reactions. Micron right there going red as well. That's 2% down. Robinhood going green at 77. Is COPEX up today? COPEX is down. No thoughts on copper other than, yes, it's following silver and gold, and I really just don't want to be in something that follows silver and gold. I think it can do well. I mean, at the end of the day, we do need more copper than there is supply for. But I just think it's more of a proxy to the larger precious metals than anything else. Palantir, high of the day, 145. 145, we touched it. 145.20. That is also green. Yeah, not to mention you have GTC in a couple weeks, which I will be at. So if anyone's going to be in San Jose, let me know. Excited to be there. First GTC for me. And Jensen, I imagine, is going to introduce a lot of cool shit. That's once again going to make the market realize, oh, that's trading at 19 times? Yeah, maybe it shouldn't. Maybe it shouldn't. So that's the next big catalyst for Nvidia. Tesla, she's trying for 400. By the way, SpaceX getting ready to file, as per Bloomberg, at a $1.75 trillion valuation as early as March this month. That was reported on Friday night. So Elon's looking to raise about $50 billion. 1.75 trillion is the valuation as Nvidia hits 181. Let's freaking go. And so it looks like we're going to be getting that IPO pretty soon. Why is Celsius down today? Celsius also. Celsius, Elf, you got a lot of these consumer discretionary companies just getting knocked. I guess all the money's going to tech. Western Digital also down 5%. Where's SanDisk? SanDisk down 4%. Okay, the memory names, they were pushing green like 10 minutes ago. They are now going red as those are starting to flip. The NVIDIA Grok acquisition is severely underrated, 1,000%. The NVIDIA Grok acquisition, especially what it means around Grok's LPU architecture around memory and SRAM, severely, severely underrated. There's a reason NVIDIA paid $20 billion. Quite frankly, the $20 billion they paid was a nothing burger to be able to get that type of team, that type of infrastructure. Remember, the founder of Grok designed the Google TPU. Like, NVIDIA is getting ready for a multi-year run with their chips being the best in business, especially for inference, which is, the biggest thing that OpenAI has been requesting in terms of faster inference for ChatGPT. Like, I really don't think that stock trading at 18 times earnings makes a lot of sense for the broader market. S&P 684.68, that's down 0.2. SoFi going green. SoFi going green. 17.79 on the day. Microsoft 399, Bitcoin 68.4. Let's see if we can get that above 68.7, which would be very nice. Zeta still green, Netflix still green. We're not really seeing a reversal as aggressive here. Now, let's see if we can get through 10:30. We got 10 minutes to go through that. Ondas up 18, BMNR up 8, and then Hood up 2%. Let's see what Mr. Tom Lee has to say about all this as well.
Now, Tom Lee, Fundstrat Global Advisor, Set of Research, and a CNBC contributor. Could be down, obviously, a lot more straight.
It's not really going to change the fundamentals of the U.S. So in the past, markets kind of sell off into the buildup, and then they tend to do better once the battle begins. And I think this is going to be similar.
We got to watch across the board, obviously, gold and the yield curve, but as in oil, obviously, oil. It won't affect us in the economy at this point, but I guess there's a scenario where down the road it could, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of experts are going to worry that this could, encompass a larger conflict, something that would be World War III or something.
Right.
But in the absence of that, I think the worst of the sell-off is going to happen this week. And, I would expect actually March to be an up month for the stock market.
What about the price of oil, which has been such a huge benefit, lower prices of oil to the economy, to the consumer? I realize that we are self-sufficient, but a lot of other countries aren't. If you look at China, if you look at India, Japan, is there a point that it gets more expensive? And if it gets more expensive for China, that is then exported to the rest of the world?
Yeah, I mean, oil's going to create a price shock because oil, it ends up so much in the economic supply chain.
Even what we produce here is going for 72 now,
Yeah,
so it doesn't matter whether we got plenty of it, but oil companies are obviously going to reap some benefits, but consumers, this will filter through in a time when we're still inflation phobic, I think.
That's right. In the past, oil shocks are actually more at risk of maybe tipping a weak economy into recession.
And that's not where we are.
Yeah, and so I think instead of thinking the Fed would be hawkish, I think the Fed might be dovish on a spike in oil.
This market is not doing things that you didn't think it might do at the beginning of the year, and it had nothing to do with what the developments of the past week. Block. That makes people think AI is maybe we're underestimating. Unless this is the same guy that had 3 times as many at Dorsey, 3 times as many employees at Twitter as was necessary to run that outfit. So I don't know whether you general paint a broad stroke about AI with what happened there, or whether this is a one-off. I tend to think we better get used to this. No?
Yeah, I know many companies that are rolling out AI workers. Even at Fundstrat, we are deploying these agents and treating them as if they're employees. But I think we're still unsure whether or not this will ultimately create more jobs or not.
And AI is will kill a lot of companies. And AI itself, the killer is, you could say, had such a run that it is at least richly valued.
Yeah, and at least in the case of the software stocks broadly, the entire complex kind of has fallen back to where they were last April. To me, that's clearly an overreaction. So I think it makes sense that you'd start to see some of the groups that got hit hard mean revert, including the Mag 7.
So I think someone else made that point, that maybe the leaders in building out AI, maybe they stay where they are and stabilize, but maybe you get a rebound from some of the oversold things.
Yeah.
So you think we're getting to the point now where the initial weakness you saw in the markets, we're making a bottom at some point? What do you say will be up for March?
Yeah, I think March is going to likely be an up month. I know it doesn't feel like that because of the way the end of February felt. But
comes in like a bear, goes out like a bull.
Yeah, it probably comes in with the better weather. But the things like software, the Mag 7, and the crypto all had early weakness. They're all probably in the final stages or have already bottomed, and I think that helps lead us up to an up April.
Have you woken up in the?
Do we think he's right, guys? He's calling for the bottom. Nvidia right there, 181. If he's right, then you might have a really, really fun March. Question is, if Tom is right about that. And again, seasonally, he does have the historical precedent of bottoming February and rallying in March being on his side. The broader question is just if that's going to take place. We have a couple clips from Brett Baer giving some analysis on what Trump said to him about Iran. Let's take a look at this.
Of where they thought they would be. I want to read some of these quotes that I asked him and how he answered. He said that as far as a plan, they do have a plan, always had a plan, of where they thought they would do. He said there is a plan. He points to Venezuela as a template, which means to me that going in, they had some sense on the ground of what was coming next. The military operation, he said there is no greater military in the U.S. And he was praising General Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, for the news conference that he just watched. Cut and dry, as he said, central casting, and they have a job to do, and they're getting it done.
All right, so Trump saying that we have a plan. Strikes have not even started yet in terms of the intensity of them. Nvidia at the highest of levels of the day right here, 180, 120. And saying that the attacks will likely continue. Again, I think he's going to be live at 11 a.m. If he is, we'll watch it. If not, then we're going to see. Also, New York Post just now, Trump says he will not rule out U.S. troops if necessary in Iran. Trump told the Post Monday that he's not ruling out sending U.S. ground troops to Iran if they were necessary, and declared, "I don't care about polling." After launching strikes Saturday to decapitate Iran's military, Trump said that he believes that he did the right thing and that most Americans support him despite initial polling indicating otherwise. arguing that allowing crazy people to acquire a nuclear weapon would have been worse than even a regional conflict. Huh. So you got Trump right there kind of denying the initial polling results, which what I've seen is not that pretty. It's not like 70%, 80% support this. It was more like 25 to 30% support the attacks. Trump right there saying, I don't care about the polls. I think this was the right thing to do. And I guess the midterms will ultimately be a referendum on if this actually ends up playing out. I mean, even when I did the poll in the chat last night, it was 60-40 on supporting. So I don't know. I don't know how much of the American base, or his base in particular, supports this. We already know 50% of the country probably doesn't support it because Trump himself is doing the attack. So then it comes down to the MAGA base. How many of them actually see the broader vision, or have they been conditioned to feel that every time we intervene in a country, it ends up resulting in disaster? And that's why, this is something they wouldn't support. CRM still down 0.5% on the day. ASTS up 4%, that reversing. EOSC up 4% as well. And then Rocket Lab almost at $70. That one slightly going green. All right. I mean, you're seeing the markets not necessarily get too upset about this, folks. They were last night, and that might change. Having said that, I mean, it could also be a head fake. Now it's a pretty ugly head fake if we actually reverse from here, because it looks pretty damn green, especially Bitcoin. But we've seen worse in February, right? We've seen worse in February. Wow, Bitcoin 68.7. 68.7 on the day, as that one continues to not stop. I saw a lot of people on Twitter buying. Yeah, I mean, the general sentiment on X last night was more bullish than bearish. I think people were more bearish last week, to be honest, just based on like the Citrini article. Because if you've been in the markets for a while, even if it's a couple of years, the war dip is always a dip you buy. Like we would have to legit start World War III, I think, for the markets to be that afraid for this to end up going the opposite direction. Because just historically, that's not how they react. South Korea, by the way, down 4% on the day. So the fact that people are more scared of a Substack article last week than potential war with Iran just goes to show you where the sentiment is around AI and how much anxiety that people have as well. South Korea down about 4% right there. Russell turning green as well. Yep, IWM. Who would have thought small caps? These are very risk-on assets. They shouldn't easily turn green. You got small caps 30 cents away from going green on the day. Looking at the option flow, someone is reloading millions worth of SPY puts into this bounce. You're looking at about 10 million of puts for 650 and 640 strikes. The expiry is March 20th. March 20th. Again, it could be a hedge, but you are seeing some option flow come in that is a bit more bearish. Last Friday, Nvidia and Netflix topped off the option volumes. Nvidia had 5 million contracts traded, Netflix at 2.9 million. So you had a lot of people get into the Netflix trade as well. Iran is hedging. Dude, the Iranian currency is compared to the US, it's bad. It's you could be a trillionaire in Iran. If anyone wants to be a trillionaire, you could be a trillionaire in Iran. It's not worth a lot. I mean, their currency has nearly gone to zero compared to the dollar. So buying bread costs 2 million of their currency. It would be crazy though if they're buying puts right now based on what's happening. 261 on the S&P 500 right here. Celsius is down 7%. Nvidia, that's up 2%. Palantir, that's up 5.7, 145. And then SLV still taking that 4% hit. Trump will care about the polls when we get into the midterms, though. You know, one could argue that Trump is potentially doing this as well, given he saw weakness in the midterm polling. And whenever you get into war, the country comes together. That is another different perspective. And so if there was any time to do this, especially if they were already thinking of getting into these strikes, you know, this might be the time for the Trump administration. The broader question becomes, what is going to be the implication on the actual affordability crisis we're having in the United States? And I think if oil continues to spike, it's going to backfire. So I think they want to do this in a way that doesn't spike oil, even though that's the inevitable short-term impact. And then we'll see if things change. One thing that is very clear is that Trump is taking a fundamentally different approach than Obama. I mean, I started looking at the Iran nuclear deal over the weekend just to get some more context about the history of us negotiating with Iran. And when you go through it, the Iran nuclear deal, it wasn't that amazing. Like it was us giving up a lot of money via sanctions to the Iranians for them to promise they would never build a nuclear weapon. And, you know, given how Iran has operated over the past 10 years, we've seen that they have no intention to not build a nuclear weapon. So I think that's why Trump was like, look, you're not going to promise. You're either going to dismantle your nuclear capabilities or we're going to attack. And it ended up being that we attacked. There was a lot of diplomacy over the past couple of weeks. Steve Witkoff, Special Envoy, Jared Kushner, they all went to Geneva. They tried to talk with the Iranians. They could not get the full confirmation of a dismantling of their nuclear program. And I think that's ultimately what led Trump to say, all right, it's time to act. Sandus, by the way, getting 5% of a hit right here, as that's also going red. Yeah, it seems like he's taking a Venezuela approach to this, which is what he told CNN as well. Now, granted, will you be able to effectively have a Venezuela approach in a country like Iran of 90 million people? I don't know. But it looks like that is the type of military action that he's trying to say. Trump, biggest surprise has been Iran attacks against Arab countries in that CNN interview, as you're getting another quote. Yeah, I think obviously the attacks on Arab countries have not necessarily been the thing you want to see, but that is how they are carrying out their attacks as well, and they're not really slowing down. Some coverage right here as well. I think Trump, I'm going to try to see if he's going to be live. It looks like he will. Let's pull this up.
Thanks, guys. The United States and Israel have air superiority over Iran, which means they can pretty much do whatever they want with some concern. So I think that is ongoing. We obviously see that they're taking down ballistic missiles, more importantly, the missile launchers. They've attacked the Navy, IRGC Navy, and most notably, of course, is the decapitation strike, which took out the Ayatollah and many members of the defense chain of command and other key players in Iran. So I think it was a strategic opportunity to take down this regime who clearly had no ambition or no willingness to give up their nuclear ambitions, and were indeed rebuilding their weapon stockpiles, their air defenses, and trying to procure the same from both Russia and China. So given the opportunity, I thought it was the right move.
Yeah. I mean, it seems certain that this will deplete, if not eliminate, their ability to obviously wage war to a certain extent, and or also embolden any of their potential allies, so to speak, in the region, that's this being Iran, to do the same. But I wonder what your expectations over a period of time, right? What are your expectations, though, for the longer-term goal? One would hope that there would be significant regime change that would change the entire orientation of the country itself.
Yeah, that's one of two or three really key questions here. Look, clearly you can't affect regime change from the outside, let alone through air power alone. What we can do, of course, is set the conditions for which the Iranian people might have more space to rise up. And one of the things that we could do, or maybe have already started doing, is not just attack the IRGC leadership, but go after their barracks, go after their nodes of power, their communication systems, attack the Basij. These are the motorcycle thugs in every city, town, and square in Iran. So if you could kind of suppress them some, then you give the Iranian people some room. But the bigger question is this, and that is what happens in the ongoing days? We being the United States and Israel, will continue to take down and degrade Iran's capabilities, that is doable. It will take some time. But does Iran try and undercut that by maybe coming back to the negotiation table? We heard the president say, and other sources report, that Ali Larijani, who is arguably in control right now, say that he wanted to do that. He came out and denied that. But you could see a play if they were smart, although they've never missed an opportunity to make a mistake. Them coming down and saying, "Hey, we're ready to negotiate on nuclear issues and willing to give it up." I doubt that, but that would be a play that could short circuit some of the broader ambitions of taking down the conventional military and forestall any type of uprising by the Iranian people.
Secretary,
so that's kind of that's one possibility here in the coming days.
Were you surprised that we knew Iran would retaliate on Israel? I mean, they were prepared for that, but that they fired missiles and drones against, and not just military targets, civilian targets across Bahrain, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Iraq. What are they doing?
Yeah, I was a little surprised. And then I think I on your network, I said late last week that my view was what they were trying to do, knowing that they had no influence with President Trump or Israel, and the Europeans were staying out of it, that they were trying to get the Arab capitals to weaken, to kind of put pressure on Trump indirectly to forestall the conflict or at least cease it. And clearly that didn't work. What they did by going after not just military targets, but at airports and hotels, is they've rallied the Arab states to really take sides. And these are the Arab states that said, "Hey, look, we won't support American forces. We won't allow passage through our airspace." And so now what they pushed them into our category. So I think it was a failed plan by the Ayatollah that just kind of engineered greater support or greater opposition to him and the regime.
And that's also very true about Saudi Arabia. A lot of reports over the weekend as Bitcoin continues to pump right here. Look at that. It looks like she's going for 70, folks. That's a $4,500 candle this morning. A lot of reports say over the weekend that Saudi Arabian officials and the prince himself called up Trump saying that we want you to attack Iran and we want this to be over with, and you will have our full support, and we're going to be on your side. Now, the prince hasn't come out and officially said that yet, but part of the reason for that could be because Iran has not necessarily been the friendliest to Saudi Arabia or Qatar over the past 10 years, and MBS is a lot more liberal compared to the Ayatollah, and he's trying to transform Saudi Arabia for a world in the next 10, 15 years of how their economy is going to develop, not just be contingent on oil, which means modernizing, allowing more people to come to the region. And as a result, he might be on the side more of Israel and the United States than other Middle Eastern proxies. S&P 500 right there is 683. So if that support ends up going against Iran with these proxy bombs that they are putting against all these different refineries and residential areas for different Middle Eastern countries, that might work in the favor of the United States. Silver continues to get a hit. Silver continues to get a hit. 3% down as Bitcoin makes a move. Is the VIX still up? The VIX is slightly up. It was up 18. Now it's up 9. You're getting a small bounce right there. It was down at 1.7. So that 7 to 9 move is about 2.5%, but it's still down substantially from the beginning of the day. You got the UK PM. He's live. Let's see what he's saying about Iran.
Are at their highest level, usually, killing innocent civilians, putting British lives at risk, and hitting countries that have not been involved. To be clear, the use of British bases is limited to the agreed defensive purposes. We are not joining the US and Israeli offensive strikes. The basis for our decision is the collective self-defense of long-standing friends and allies and protecting British lives. It is in accordance with international law, and we've produced a summary of our legal advice, which clearly sets this out. We will keep the decision under review.
Okay, so Starmer not necessarily condemning the United States for the attacks, but he's definitely not as optimistic to help him. And you're seeing that tone shift by the UK Prime Minister. S&P is 683. Bitcoin, really the story of the day, 69,322. Is Nvidia still holding 181? Nvidia just below that 181 level. Well, it's going to be interesting to see how a bunch of these prime ministers across Europe react. I mean, again, France and Germany signaled their support for the US over the weekend. It didn't mean they necessarily agreed with everything. They didn't go as far as Spain to say that you can't use our bases. But you are seeing a bit of a shift in terms of how these countries are ultimately thinking about this. By the way, to give some context of how good March is for the stock market, even in 2022, which was a horrible year for the S&P, March was green. The 5-year average in March is up about 1.6%. So this is one of those times of the year where, in general, you get some more momentum. Celsius now down 7%. Pounds are going for the high of day right there, 145.50. The usually March is not the worst. Farzad will be on probably on the close today. He's not going to be on in the open, but he'll be on the close. I think his perspective, I talked to him over the weekend, is going to be very valuable given he is Iranian. And but not only is he, he's happy the attacks happened, but he's also, practical about the reality of regime change. And so I think his nuanced take on this will be good today on the close, and we'll hear from him. What else do we have? Hims catching a bid right there. That's up about 8.3%, fell to 1450 last week. Pounter 145.50. Let's see if that can make a run to 150. I mean, that would be quite incredible. Google right there at 304 as well. Amit, could you greet my name? Big supporter of your streams. Bar Jolly, thank you for watching the streams. Really appreciate you being here, Bar Jolly. And thank you for being part of the show. And again, look, I know when it comes to politics, there's a lot of conflicting views and conflicting perspectives. And some people think this, some people think that. Again, my goal has never been to try to influence people on a political perspective, because I just quite frankly don't care about trying to advance my political beliefs, whatever they may be, because I care more about the stock market. But when an event like this happens, you have to be able to show both sides. And I think if we draw a line across the sand, there's one side that says this had to happen, Iran can't get a nuke, and we needed to free the Iranian people. The other side that clearly says every time we try to do something like this, even if we acknowledge it's in the name of morality, ethics, humanity, freedom, etc., it ends up leading to something worse, ends up fueling the defense industrial complex, ends up helping the interests of other countries versus the United States. You've got people that are homeless in the United States that we're not focused on, but we're focused on freeing Iranian people. I think those are the two different perspectives. And most people fall on one or two sides of those perspectives. But I think it's okay to be in the middle as well and say, look, I get it, but I also don't get it. To have at least a bit more of a nuanced take. Now, if you're from Iran, you're from those regions, you've felt the oppression and torture of the regime, you have a much deeper approach as Bitcoin right here continues to move higher, 69.5 now. And I've talked to a couple of those people over the weekend, and they don't want to hear any shit about, this is going to be bad for war or boots on the ground. They don't want to hear any of that. They just want to celebrate the fact that the Ayatollah is dead. But there is a different perspective. And I think that perspective is, worth trying to understand as well. What else do we see? VIX still at 8.5, just below 9. That one continues to start to come down. SanDisk, I don't know why the memory names are getting hit today. They were having a lot of momentum in the pre-markets, even in the futures last night. Pound here, she keeps pushing. 145.75, folks. Let me check resistance at 146. But she continues to push. Are we closing green today? It definitely feels like we have a shot. 146 is 26,000 shares. Yeah, people selling their winners to buy oil. Oracle, that's up 3% as well. Yeah, dude, the oil trade is crowded. It's crowded. The time to buy it, I think, was last week, not when it spikes. So I don't know if selling tech to transition to oil is the best best idea right here. Home Depot, that's down 3%. They're going to have earnings this week. Costco also catching the bid as well. Do we have Trump live at 11? I do not see it. I don't think he's going to be live. Again, we have reports saying he'll be talking about this at 11. I don't know if it's going to be publicly. He's already given a couple of interviews so far. I guess we'll find out in about 15, 20 minutes. Let's also pull up a couple different pieces of macro. S&P is red by about 0.5%. The 10-year spiking back above 4. Unfortunately, this thing needs to go down, but at least it's below 4.2, which is where it was at over the past couple of days. Someone says, I was born in the 80s. Khamenei was the last to go. Bin Laden, they've all been steering shit and daring us to drop bombs my entire life. It's worth a try. Yeah, see, and I think that's a valuable perspective. You've got people that were born in the region or a family in the region saying at least it's worth trying to get rid of them, given the level of terror they have imposed, not only on Americans, but their own people over the past 40 years. But is that America's problem? Right. And you know, ironically, the whole reason this was so confusing over the weekend is because unless Trump got some intel that like they are ready to launch a nuke tomorrow, Tesla back above 400, and we need to do something, this is going against everything that he ran on for the past 10 years, which is no new wars. Now, maybe this is a special military operation, and this doesn't have to be a prolonged war. That is still up for debate. Time will tell. But for him to flip either means the intel was really good or there had to be a different reason for why we ended up doing this. Because again, he didn't campaign on this. It'd be different if he campaigned on freeing the Iranian people and, you know, stopping Iran from having a nuclear weapon by any means necessary. But a lot of it was more so, no, I just don't want to get involved in this shit. This is not our problem. Unless it became our problem with the new intel that he got. And as a result, that's why we did what we have to do. On the question of, is it America's problem? Well, those regimes have been trying to make themselves America's problem. Yeah, look, I mean, that's fair. And I think the American people are then going to ask the question, okay, how serious was this regime at really making themselves a problem when it comes to a nuclear perspective? And I think that's going to be the extent of like, hey, does that determine if he wins the midterms or not? I think the midterms have now become a referendum on this more than anything. More than oil prices, more than affordability, more than mortgage rates. Either this is successful and it's not, or it's not, and that determines the midterms. Rocket Lab, by the way, getting a nice bid of 3%. 3% right there, as that is also going green. As a veteran, I've seen firsthand what war does to veterans and the long-term effects, and wondering if this will be worth it. Yeah, 4 Americans already have been killed in this war. And that's always the question, right? Is it worth it? And again, based on how Trump talked about it yesterday, it was, I'll pull up the clip right here. It was him acknowledging that it is what it is. This stuff has to happen, and it's not something we can necessarily avoid because wars are ugly. But the way that he said it was making it very obvious that, you know, America is not going to back down, and we are going to have to imagine this as one of the likely outcomes for how this plays out.
We do, and the freedom and security is we have done things that others are unable to do. But it's because of warriors who are willing to lay down their lives to do battle with our enemies. And they do battle better than anybody. An Iranian regime armed with long-range missiles and nuclear weapons would be a dire threat to every American. We cannot allow a nation that raises terrorist armies to possess such weapons, would allow them to extort the world to their evil will. Not going to let it happen. We're not happening to us, and we're not going to let it happen to others. The United States has the strongest military the world has ever seen. Didn't get there. Earlier today, CENTCOM shared the news that 3 U.S. military service members have been killed in action. As one nation, we grieve for the true American patriots who have made the ultimate sacrifice for our nation, even as we continue the righteous mission for which they gave their lives. We pray for the full recovery of the wounded and send our immense love and eternal gratitude to the families of the fallen. And sadly, there will likely be more. Before it ends, that's the way it is.
Again, sadly, there will likely be more before it happens. That's the way that it is. I mean, it's a stark acknowledgement from Trump saying, yes, people will die here. Americans will die. But that is the brutal reality of war. And so it doesn't look like he's necessarily getting ready to stop anytime soon. Nvidia right there, 180.9. Google still at 305. Bitcoin being the real winner of the day, 69.3. As that one continues to go green. Do you think SoFi has bottomed? Look, I really didn't think it would go below 17 last night, but it did. I don't think SoFi should be anywhere near here. Unfortunately, the narrative has changed on SoFi, and that's the brutal reality of markets. Fintech narrative has changed. The bank narrative has changed. Noto's probably not going to get his bonus, guys. He needs to get this thing to 35 in a month and keep it there for 2 months to be able to get there. I just don't see that happening. So does it go down to 13, 14? I don't think so. I think it should be able to be stable. Granted, S&P takes a 5% haircut, so if I absolutely will touch those levels. But if the S&P stays stable, then hopefully this 17 to 20 range is okay. But man, what a absolute head fake. So it spends 7 months around 25, 26 bucks. And then on the first earnings, which is the best earnings they've ever given in history, drops below 20. It's just not the year for fintech yet. There's a long time of there's long year left, but first 2 months have not been it for fintech. Rocket Lab right there, 4%. That one goes green. What about S&P inclusion? I don't think S&P inclusion even matters right now. First of all, they're not even eligible yet. They need to get above like 1850 to get there and stay there for a while. But second of all, S&P might give you a temporary pump. Realistically, this is a narrative change that needs to happen for SoFi. And that narrative is still not in the best situation. 180.60 right there on BTC. Circle's up 12%. That one's getting some more momentum. Fitch Ratings, U.S. Supreme Court tariff ruling positive for ports amid trade uncertainty. Okay, so Fitch is coming out saying that the Supreme Court decision was the right decision to happen. It looks like, guys, Trump is going to be live at 11. That's what I'm seeing across the board. I don't see the stream set up yet, but it might end up being 11:30. But most news sources are saying he will address the war live. He will also award the Medal of Honor to 3 U.S. Army service members in a White House ceremony. Okay, so if this is live, that's what we are going to be seeing. How about the semis today? How are those doing? So SAS is having an okay day. Semis are, wow. Dude, Nvidia and Dell are the only green. I didn't even realize that. Everything's red except for Nvidia and Dell, which goes to show you the market just wasn't going to let Nvidia get that cheap. Dell had a blockbuster earnings last week. They beat by $17 billion on revenue, so they deserve it. But Intel, AMD, ON, Broadcom, Qualcomm, everything down the drain right here. It's a little weird that Nvidia is diverging to that extent, but I guess that's how the market's thinking of it. Axon's also up 5% on the day. How about Amcor? That is also basically flat on the day, which is not too bad. Microsoft is green, 398, just below 400. Meta is also green, 652. You remember that clip that Zucks had about we might misspend a couple $100 billion, but that's okay? I rewatched that over the weekend, and it just made you remember how much they are willing to spend and how much they don't care about continuing to spend. Like, he literally said, we might misspend a couple $100 billion, but the risk for us is overspending versus not spending enough. And it makes you remember, oh, wait a second. Yeah, that is That is something that Zucks is not playing around with. Which also means the spend is likely not stopping anytime soon. And so once again, I think the market looks at that stuff and says, okay, maybe Nvidia is not something we have to fade as easily. Nvidia 200-day was 172, so Nvidia bounced off 172.21 during at 8 a.m. today. Yeah, it's kind of a classic textbook bounce, right? 180.9 as that also continues to go green. Covered calls, we talked about it last night. They have been a game changer in this market, and they have, really allowed people to benefit from the momentum of the volatility to the up and downside, which has been, one of the better elements of making some income in this market. SoFi right there, 1786. Celsius still down 7 today. Palantir pushing. She is, wow. When's the last time we had a 7% day? It's been a minute, right? It's been a freaking minute. Palantir 146.80, 147 resistance is only 17,000 shares. 3 cents away from 147. 3 cents away. If that one hits 150 again, that's going to be nice to see. That is going to be nice to see. India and Canada sealed a landmark $2.6 billion uranium supply agreement. Both countries also agreed to finalize negotiations on a comprehensive economic partnership agreement, aka the CEPA. Okay, so I have India and Canada working together. Did we touch 147? Yeah, we touched it for a second. 147.01. Touched it for a second. Meta now getting some move. There you go. Back above 147. Meta almost 655. Rocket Lab almost 72. SoFi almost 18. Oracle almost 150. HIM's getting a move. Bitcoin got rejected at 69.6, but still at 69. We need S&P to go green now. We need that one to go green, which would be nice. Not there yet, but that would be important. When are we doing the Iran meetup? Yeah, that's also a question. By the way, here's that clip of Zucks once again saying that he's ready to spend as much as possible.
Say is I actually think the risk is higher on the other side. If you build too slowly, and then super intelligence is possible in 3 years, but you built it out assuming it would be there in 5 years, then you're just out of position on what I think is going to be the most important technology that enables the most new products and innovation and value creation in history. So, so I don't know. It's I don't want to be kind of cavalier about it. Obviously these are very large amounts of money and we're trying to get it right. But I think the risk, at least for a company like Meta, is probably in not being aggressive enough.
Look how he's even speaking about it. He's very nonchalant. He's like, yeah, it's like, I get it. It's a lot of money, but someone's going to have to spend it. And if it's not us, it's our competitors. And if it's our competitors, then we lose. The thing about Zucks, which, by the way, look at this headline. Bessent, Treasury is terminating all use of Anthropic products. Wow. Dario just lost himself the biggest customer with unlimited checkbook. It looks like the Treasury is phasing out Anthropic. The thing about Zucks is back in 2021, when he introduced the metaverse, I remember him doing an interview, and he basically was trying to signal that advertising and social media scrolling on your phone or your laptop is going to be a thing of the past. Now, obviously, his metaverse reality has not come into fruition. Even, changing the company from Facebook to Meta, the whole idea was like, we have to think differently about this. But the fact that he went so far as to change the name of the company and start investing in reality labs, all this stuff, means that Zucks, to an extent, feels the days of just scrolling through ads on your phone and your laptop are going to be numbered. And he knows that, it's a great advertising business, but we need to do something different. Now, the metaverse thing didn't work, but AI made scrolling through your phone and computer so much more addictive because the algorithm got so much more better that I think it sucked him back into, oh yeah, I wanted this whole new metaverse thing where people are going to live in some alternate reality, but AI is that alternate reality that pops up on their phone because our algorithm just got 1 trillion times better. And so I think Zucks wants to keep spending not only to fuel the ad business, but also to find what that next computing platform is. I know a lot of people say glasses. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. And in that case, you're going to need to spend. You're going to need to spend a lot of money to even have a chance to figure out what's the next evolution beyond advertising on the phone. And I think Zucks is obviously ready to continue to spend that. Can't remember who it was, but someone close to Zucks was saying that he hates ads as a business. I've never heard that quote, but from other podcasts I've heard, you can tell he just wants to move past that. Like, I don't think he likes having 99% of their revenues and net income come from ads. But then again, if they're growing it at 33% from a freaking $150 billion base, then you can't be that upset about it. And I think that's the broader AI innovation stack that has come through for Meta. But Anthropic has some different issues outside of Meta. So it looks like, all right, if Bessent is saying the Treasury is going to phase out of this, then that means other parts of the government will as well. Yep, quote from Bessent, at the direction of POTUS, the U.S. Treasury is terminating all use of Anthropic products, including the use of its Claude platform. Within our department, the American people deserve confidence that every tool in government serves the public interest, and under President Trump, no private company will ever dictate terms of our national security. Silver is collapsing, by the way. Silver down 7%. I think Dario kind of just was not the best at communicating with the White House. There was a report by Axios. I don't know if it's true or not. Gold, by the way, just going red. But the report was that Pete Hegseth gave Dario the deadline until 5 p.m. to call him to work things out. Dario ends up calling at 5:15, 15 minutes late because he was in a quote-unquote really important meeting with executives. And Pete Hegseth gets so pissed that he had to wait 15 minutes that he doesn't even have the meeting on Friday. Otherwise, there might have been some level of reconciliation between Anthropic and the Department of War because he felt so disrespected that the guy made him wait 15 minutes. I mean, like, what meeting could you be in that's so much more important than talking to the Department of War? And as a result, that's when they call up OpenAI. And then Sam Altman finagles his way into getting this deal. So again, I think there's two perspectives. I think there's a lot of people saying, well, Dario did this because he has ethics and morality, and he wanted very explicit admissions from the United States. They wouldn't do X, Y, Z. And then the other perspective is, well, the government's not going to explicitly admit anything, but you should trust the government enough because you are not the king, right? The government was democratically elected. And if the government was democratically elected and they say they're not going to do something, you have to trust them as a private citizen, not a public official. Dario rejected that mentality. Sam Altman embraced it. And that is where you get the divergence between why Anthropic ultimately decided to not do this and why Sam Altman decided that this was the best idea to go forward.
You had a moment with the president right now, tonight. What would you say to him?
I would say we are patriotic Americans. We have done everything we have done has been for the sake of this country, for the sake of supporting U.S. national security. Our leaning forward in deploying our models with the military was done because we believe in this country. We believe in defeating our autocratic adversaries. We believe in defending America. The red lines we have drawn, we drew because we believe that crossing those red lines is contrary to American values. And we wanted to stand up for American values. And when we were threatened with supply chain designation and Defense Production Act, which are unprecedented intrusions into the private economy by the government, we exercised our classic First Amendment rights to speak up and disagree with the government.
Now, again, you had government officials come out last night and say this guy's full of shit. We wanted to do a LinkedIn database search for recruiting, which is technically, if you get really technical, surveillance, but it's not actually surveillance, right? If you're trying to amass data to be able to figure out who to recruit and you use LinkedIn. And Anthropic, he said, was against that because that's putting data together and then trying to use advanced predictive models to be able to come to conclusions about certain candidates that could be part of the DOW. Now, maybe the Department of War is lying about that. Maybe they're finding a straw man to be able to accuse Anthropic of seeming overly exaggerated around concerns of what they would be doing and stretching the definition of surveillance. But Their argument is like, this guy wanted us to call him on every little thing that we wanted to use his software for, when in reality, he should just trust that we're not going to violate the Constitution. And I think OpenAI's approach was like, hey, we are not democratically elected. We are a private company. We have these restrictions that are built within our architecture. As long as the DOW tells us they're not going to violate this, we don't need them to literally say word for word they're not going to do it inside of some type of contract like Dario was asking. We just need them to tell us they're not going to do it. We trust them. Dario went the opposite direction. And maybe that's for the right thing. Maybe you shouldn't trust them. But nonetheless, it is likely leading to Anthropic being phased out of the entire government. Ironically, this entire Iran attack was done using Claude, which is the funny part here. Tanner says, is all the talk about OpenAI going bankrupt gone now? Like, clearly, in my opinion, they're going to be a top 10 company for a long time. I 1000% agree with Tanner. I think OpenAI is become so much more valuable over the weekend, not only because of the growth numbers that we got, which is on the $110 billion round that they raised, 910 million weekly users, Codex is increasing 3x month over month, but they just signed up to get the biggest client of all time, which is the US government. And if they do a good job with the Department of War, they are going to be scaling it to every level of the government in terms of being the sort of model of choice, which means they're probably going to be getting billions and billions of dollars of revenue from the government. Now, morally, maybe Anthropic is getting the edge right here, which is why a lot of people cancel their OpenAI subscription over the weekend and are shifting to Claude. But realistically, how many people are going to leave OpenAI? Like my mom and my sister that use ChatGPT. Oh, by the way, my dad, I was talking to him over the weekend. He was telling me some stuff. I was like, how do you know this? He was like, oh, ChatGPT. And I just started laughing. I'm like, this guy, like, my dad's 65. He's not going on Googling. He's going to ChatGPT. And it was hilarious because I was like, yeah, the ChatGPT they're going to win. They're going to keep winning. They have some issues with CapEx. They have some issues with monetization, but they are going to keep winning. People are not going to stop using it. And if that's the case, they're probably going to be a much bigger company than they are today. If OpenAI is not going bankrupt, is it fair to assume Oracle will not go bankrupt? Yes, but it is not fair to assume that OpenAI will give Oracle the $300 billion of RPO that Oracle says they're going to get. However, I do feel Oracle has been pretty discounted from that initial pop. Again, they were at 350. They're now at 148. They fell to 123 during Liberation Day. If you can look past the credit default swaps spiking up and look deeper into their ability to monetize their RPO, which is still a big question, Oracle's probably going to be okay from here. That's my opinion. But they definitely don't have the type of balance sheet that a Microsoft or a Meta does. Also, one way to get access to OpenAI, I just realized over the weekend, is to buy SoftBank stock. You can buy SoftBank. Their ADRs, it's down 1.84%, but yeah, this is one way to have exposure. Now, granted, this thing might go up or down crazily in a day based on OpenAI headlines, but these guys are going to own about 10% of the business. So they are expecting this to be worth a lot more in the future as well. This isn't changing my spending habits at all. It's all fake virtue signaling. If Anthropic actually cared about ethics, they would want to be in the room to help design it, right? Well, that's the other perspective, right? That if Anthropic actually cared about the government and democracy, that they would want to help the DOW, they would take them at their word, they would trust them, whether or not you agree that they should trust them. They should theoretically be trusting the publicly, democratically elected Department of War. And they shouldn't be afraid that their technology is going to be manipulated by the DOW. That might be the true patriotic thing. At least that's one perspective. Obviously, Dario has a different agreement. Robinhood, is she going for 80 today, folks? 4% on hoodie. It would be very nice if we could see Hood get above $80. Trump is not live yet. When he's live, I will switch over. But he's not live yet. The example that I heard that was the most compelling over the weekend for the counter perspective on Anthropic is imagine if Apple didn't like Trump striking Iran and Apple says government officials can't buy the iPhone, which is obviously a vital communication tool in order for people in the military and government to be able to speak with each other. Even if they're using an app on the iPhone like Signal, they're using it through the iPhone. And so what if Apple was like, yeah, we just don't agree with American politics, even though, America elected this administration, and so we're not going to sell them the iPhone. I don't know when you think about it from that perspective, it kind of sounds ridiculous, right? Now, one could make the argument that Claude and the way that AI is being used is totally different than the iPhone. That's fair to make as well, but it puts into context a little bit how upset the Department of War is based on Dario's comments. Again, I understand it's not the same. Some people think it's not the same, but that is a perspective that is out there to try to understand as well. And this is also why Palantir has never really cared about this, because Palantir is like, hey, we are not the people. The people are electing the government. We are serving the government. AWS is also providing their cloud computing power to the government. So is Microsoft with Azure. So those companies get up and say, hey, we don't want to, give you our cloud computing infrastructure so that you can run your operations. Like, a lot of this stuff starts to fall apart when companies get that granular. But Dario has a different perspective. He thinks AI is so much more valuable and so much more important than every other technology, and it can be so much more manipulated, that he's having that hardline stance. And, that's where you're getting the divergence right here. I see. Thanks for the super chat. I wouldn't rule out Anthropic entirely just yet. Just like any enterprise, the government will need to employ multiple models to fully leverage AI. This may just be a typical Trump admin knee-jerk, we the boss reaction. Yeah, I mean, that is also very fair. They could just be trying to threaten Anthropic to come back to the negotiating table with a better response. But I think the statement Anthropic put out over the weekend, they put out like this 5-paragraph statement, was very, very explicit about how they view their role in the world. And it doesn't look like they're necessarily going to be giving in anytime soon. Which means maybe there's a resolution, but if not, then yeah, I think it's kind of likely the Department of War moves on. And then you have OpenAI take a lot of that business. Gasoline prices are rising after the U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iran, with Brent crude jumping to 82. National averages are now $3. They could hit $3.15 in the coming weeks. Seeing that headline here from Bloomberg. Archer does have earnings today as well after the bell. Archer, kind of a defense name. That's up 4%. Not really defense, but they do have a partnership with Anduril. Let me pull up Anthropic's statement over the weekend. Trump's still not live yet. When he goes live, we'll switch over. Yeah, still waiting for it. By the way, put in the chat which chatbot you use, because although I pay for both, I use ChatGPT so much. It's kind of ridiculous how much I use of it. So yeah, I don't use Grok. I don't really use Gemini. It's mainly ChatGPT. Claude is good for some stuff, but GPT is kind of the main one I use. So this is what they said. We have not yet received direct communication from the Department of War. We have tried in good faith to reach an agreement with the Department of War, making clear that we support all lawful uses. To the best of our knowledge, these exceptions have not affected a single government mission to date. We believe this designation would be legally unsound. They're talking about the designation of a supply chain risk. Sam Altman also came out and said, hey, we don't think that should happen for Anthropic. And they said no amount of intimidation or punishment from the DOW will change our position on mass domestic surveillance or fully autonomous weapons. We will challenge any supply chain risk designation in court. Doesn't look like they are willing to change their perspective here. And if they're not, then maybe Anthropic's not going to be used as often. See a lot of people saying GPT. Seeing a lot of people say Gemini. I'm seeing more Geminis than GPTs, I think. Last time we did this, I think Gemini and GPT were tied both at 30% when I did the poll. Not seeing a lot of Groks. Not seeing a lot of Groks. I tried to use Grok over the weekend again. I'm sorry, but it is just not good. Like, it's just, Elon has dropped the ball. I'm sorry, but it sucks, dude. Like, it really does suck. It is so bad. And I pay for it every month because I pay for Twitter Premium. So I want it to be good. And I'm just like, man, it's not. It's just not. Maybe other people have a different perspective. I'll put the poll in the chat again. But it's not. GPT, Grok, Gemini, Claude. Which one do you use the most? That is the question. Grok is good on Twitter when you're like asking if something's true or not on a tweet. But if you're trying to have an in-depth conversation and stuff, like I don't know. And also, do people know 7 of the 12 co-founders of XAI have left over the past month? And I'm starting to ask myself why. Like, you guys are going to get some juicy SpaceX stock-based compensation. It's going to be one of the biggest companies in the world, literally, when they go public. Why the hell would you leave? And you start to wonder, like, what exactly do those co-founders not like about working at XAI that's pissing them off so much that they have to leave? And maybe they just don't like the direction in which Grok is going. Perplexity is kind of getting a revival with that computer thing they put out last week. I mean, it actually is pretty damn impressive. I've not tried it yet, but from the videos I've seen, it looks pretty incredible. Silver still down 6, folks. Completely getting faded for people to pile into Bitcoin. Bitcoin right back to 69.7. This is where she got rejected at. All right. This is the moment. Let's see if it can actually get above certain levels. 69.70. 69,790 is what it needs to get above to hit a new high of day. But yeah, Perplexity is once again getting a bit more attention. Tesla also goes green as well. 402. Also, who's buying the SpaceX IPO? Put in the chat. They do 15 billion of revenue. I can't wait to see that S1. They're going at 1.75 trillion. I just can't do it, guys. I can't do it. There's no way I could do it. I mean, look at this chart right here of SpaceX's revenue. It was flat for 5 years from 2016 to 2021. And the revenue growth in 2025 was 18%. How the hell do they justify a 1.75 trillion, even if 2026 reaccelerates like 30, 35%, which we don't even know because we're only 2 months into 2026. So, we're not even going to have a full quarter of S1 data. 18% growth, almost 2 trillion valuation, 15 billion of revenue, 140 times sales. I mean, there's got to be a different narrative, which is this whole data center in space, Starship, all this other stuff. And then you have to think long term. Oh, trust me, I'm thinking long term. But the entry price within your long term allocation also matters. And long term, if you buy it at 2 trillion, I'm sure you're buying SpaceX not for a measly 10% return. You probably want to double for that thing to go to 4 trillion, which is what Nvidia is worth right now. And Nvidia is doing 10x, not 10x, 25x the amount of revenue. No, don't even get started about the net income. Like it just doesn't make sense. So like it has to be a totally different argument versus valuation if people are buying SpaceX. And I think there is a qualitative argument around space colonization and potentially data centers in space, all that stuff. I just don't know if I personally buy into those arguments in any meaningful way, which is where Rocket Lab might end up catching the bid. And I also think, once again, a lot of people have been in SpaceX for years. They are praying for exit liquidity, and this might be their opportunity. Nvidia, high of day, 180-170. 180-170 on Nvidia. That is green. Trump's still not live yet. Trying to see if he will be already set up right here. He's not live yet. Let me pull up where I was looking at. Yeah, so this is the room I have right now. So he will be here soon, and we'll see what's there. What did you guys say on the poll? Wow. Yeah, this is almost exactly what happened last week. 37% say Gemini, 36% say ChatGPT. Almost tied with Gemini and ChatGPT. I think a little bit. I don't know. I just like but Gemini's been significantly better from a year ago, which is what U.S. Embassy in Pakistan, effective March 2nd, the U.S. Consulate General has temporarily suspended operations. Okay, so we're getting some updates from Pakistan. U.S. Embassy in Beirut says it will be closed on March 3rd. And Qatar's Ministry of Defense said that it shot down 2 Iranian fighter jets, intercepted 7 ballistic missiles, down 5 drones launched from. The audio got hit. Hold on. Okay, are we good? Are we back? Back? Yes? No? Yes, no? How did that randomly happen, bro? We're better. If not, I'll switch the mic. We should be okay. Better. Should be good. Go back to that black screen. All right, we should be good now. I don't know why that happened, but we are back. 181 on a video. What I was saying is the U.S. Embassy in Beirut said it was going to be closed on March 3rd, and Qatar's Ministry of Defense said Air Force shot down 2 Iranian fighter jets, intercepted 7 ballistic missiles, and drowned 5 drones launched from Iran. So those are some of the updates. Also, the U.S. Embassy in Pakistan said that effective March 2nd, they are also temporarily suspending operations. I'm sorry to hear about Iran, Amit. I hope your family is safe. I don't have any family in Iran. I am not Iranian, but I also hope that things get better in Iran. I do have friends that have family in Iran, but I personally don't. I understand. I might look like I'm from that region, but I'm not. You know, that was the crazy thing when I was growing up. Like, the amount of times people called me a terrorist, I'm like, bro, I don't even practice that religion. I don't like it doesn't matter. You look like one of them. It's like, okay, but like, you're not even accurate on the way you're saying. Why does the mic keep messing up? Is it okay? Why is it being so dumb? What the hell's going on with the mic today? Okay, it should be all right. Let's get some more coverage on Trump right here. It should be live soon.
For that visit to Beijing, he wants to be partners with Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping has very different ambitions, whether it's on technology, whether it's on Taiwan, whether it's on human rights. His view is quite different from the United States of America. He wants to win the economic war, and he wants every advantage that he can have. The president, I think, is naive to think that we and China can just get along on all fronts and not have to compete with each other.
Axios had a good report today that that no president in the modern era has ordered more strikes on more countries than the president, whether that's Iran or Venezuela, Nigeria, Yemen, Syria, Iraq. And then Fox today reports that the president told Bret Baier that the plan is to use Venezuela as some kind of template. How do you think that would work?
Well, Venezuela and Iran are incredibly different countries. The president found that Delcy Rodriguez, the vice president, who's now acting president, could be someone he could deal with. We'll see where that goes. He clearly did it not to stop drugs from coming into our country, which was the original rationale, but in essence, to have some control over Venezuela's oil.
Trump's still not live yet. The interesting thing about the Venezuela comparison is we went to Venezuela, one could argue, yes, to capture Maduro, but also to have control over oil, and we got a lot of control over oil. Iran also has a lot of oil. Iran also has a lot of oil. And as a result of having a lot of oil, one could make the argument that the administration is also thinking of it from that perspective, even though they're making the argument around nuclear weapons as the bigger claim. Trump just posted a video. He's not live yet, but this is a brand new video. Let's go to this. It was posted 4 minutes ago.
36 hours. The United States and its partners have launched Operation Epic Fury, one of the largest, most complex, most overwhelming military offensives the world has ever seen. Nobody's seen anything like it. We have hit hundreds of targets in Iran, including Revolutionary Guard facilities, Iranian air defense systems. Just now it was announced that we knocked out 9 ships plus their naval building, all in a matter of literally minutes. Iran's formerly supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, is dead. This wretched and vile man had the blood of hundreds and even thousands of Americans on his hands and was responsible for the slaughter of
Is this old, guys? Is this the same video he just posted this 5 minutes ago? Is this old? Hold on, let me fact check this. Yeah, they reposted the old video. Okay, so that's not new. They reposted it. They literally just posted it 6 minutes ago, which is why we thought it was new. All right. It is not. We are still waiting for Trump to go live, but that is the old video. I don't know why they just reposted it. That is kind of weird. They deleted the previous post and reposted it again. I don't know why they did that, but regardless, that's what they did. Kratos right here. Wow, Kratos getting dumped. Did that just happen, that red candle? That... no, it's been in decline for the past 20 minutes. How about Red Cat? Red Cat was up 30. Now it's only up 16. Ondas was up 20. Now it's only up 10. All right, so your drone stocks are taking a breather. They were up a lot. Kratos officially going red. Not crazy to see them take a breather, but yeah, that is kind of ugly. Rocket Lab as well, going red. It was at 72. Once again, FOMOing into some of these names that are already up 20 to 30%. It's just tough for them to, continue moving higher. You're starting to see them have at least some weakness right here. How about XLE? Oil is actually still moving up, so that one's working. Aero Environment, wow, 12% down. This thing was at $303 at 10.17. It's at 222. Goodness. What about Viavi? Viavi is the opposite. That's up 12%. So Aero Environment, Red Cat, Ondas, Kratos. Starting to see some red candles, and then Rocket Lab also flipped red on the day. Yeah, even Exxon only up 1.5% now. It was up a lot more. Dude, it was at 160. Now it's at 154. So again, some of these names might be fading out a little bit because either they're pricing in a different outcome or they just think the trade was Friday to Sunday night, and now that trade is kind of over. Iran Revolutionary Guards say another wave of attacks have launched. Iranian media says new missiles are being used on these attacks. Google, by the way, down 2%. All right, so we might be getting some videos soon of those new missiles. There were a ton of videos last night from Jerusalem of those missiles actually hitting. And although Israel has not given us any casualty count, it's estimated around 12 people so far have been hit. Iran Revolutionary Guard saying another wave of attacks are officially launching. Well, all that money's coming to BTC. Looks like all of that money, it's finding its way into BTC. U.S. sources say selling oil from U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve after attacks on Iran not currently being discussed. They cannot deplete the SPR because we already don't have enough oil to begin with in it. So it would not be the best thing in the world to use that. But I mean, who knows if oil prices get that bad that we have to. Let's get a couple of other updates as well about what's going on with some of these proxy attacks.
And we continue our breaking news. Look right here, a live look at Beirut, Lebanon. We're seeing new attacks there as Israel is targeting Hezbollah in Lebanon. And Hezbollah is, of course, an Iranian proxy. And this has been going on for several hours. Hezbollah entering this U.S.-Israel war against Iran shows just how widening this conflict is becoming. And we are waiting for President Trump to speak on the war with Iran. We're going to bring that to you live. The
Ground in Israel. This could be a while. We're hearing maybe 6 weeks, maybe more. We're about to hear from the President of the United States. He may give us an indication of where they are in this conflict right now. Any talk of sending more U.S. troops, that sort of thing coming from him, that may give us an idea. But what are the people you're talking with saying?
Yeah, Harris, most of the Israeli population has spent the last 60 hours in bomb shelters, but they are very supportive of this operation against the Islamic Republic of Iran. They understand the threats firsthand. Missiles have soared through the skies of this country, not just over the past 2 days, but for years. Iranian proxies have threatened the Israeli people and also U.S. forces across the region. They watched as these negotiations were unfolding, first in Oman and then in Switzerland, and they saw President Trump offer an olive branch to the Iranians. He gave them a diplomatic off-ramp, and they didn't take it. And that's what the Israeli people continue to say when you talk to them. They say, look, there's no other option to create stability in our part of the world. They understand the president was able to get a ceasefire deal together between Israel and Hamas inside Gaza, something many regional countries didn't believe was possible. He took the momentum after that to create the Board of Peace in an effort to create more stability across the region. But both Israeli officials and American officials agree it was Iran's supreme leader, the Ayatollah Khamenei, and the regime in Tehran that was the last major roadblock to President Trump's vision of peace across the region. And so the Israelis are quite supportive of this operation, understanding that when the Americans are striking these missile launching positions that you see, they are saving Israeli lives. And that's what it comes down to here. They understand the price of war, but it's a price they're willing to pay.
And in the long run, Iranian lives too, because we're seeing so much celebration in the streets here and around the world as well from Iranian citizens who either fled.
All right, so more strikes for different U.S. embassies across the world. We're seeing Beirut and Pakistan that are dealing with the extent of it right here. Tesla trying to hold 400, but not really able to make it. 403 down back to 415. Nvidia, kind of the only super big tech green name that's really held up today, 181. The rest of them slightly trying, but Nvidia getting the biggest benefit, up 2%. Meta's up 0.5%. Microsoft as well, which is up 1%. Yes, we should have Technical Tuesday tomorrow. As always, earnings tomorrow are CrowdStrike and GitLab after the bell. So it'll be pretty quick with earnings, and then we'll get a Technical Tuesday as Chad gets upset about that. We got to do it. We got to look at the male astrology. By the way, Chad, you want to see what I vibe coded over the weekend? You always get mad at me because I don't build in AIP, but look at that, folks. This is what I did over the weekend. I vibe coded my own world monitor to monitor the situation. Look at this. I got live webcams. Look at this. This shit looks like it's like Palantir or something. I have live webcams. I have feeds. I have a map of the world. I have these red and yellow dots. I have everything. So Chad, next time you say I don't build anything, just realize I am monitoring the situation. Okay? Spent 48 hours over the weekend monitoring the situation. Seems like you are ready for war. Oh my gosh. Dude, it was so funny. This whole week I had like 4 different screens, and I was like, dude, I can't do anything about this war. I'm not gonna do shit. The most I can do is cover and live stream and talk and communicate about it. I have zero impact on this, and I'm over here like seriously looking at like the flight logs of what's happening in the airspace. I'm like, bro, I have zero control over any of this shit. But as a man, you know, men need to go to Home Depot on Sundays to be a man. Like if you don't go to a Home Depot on a Sunday and like fix some shit in your house, you're not a man. I felt like as a man, I had to monitor the situation. And if I didn't, then I wouldn't be a real man. So that's what I did. Having said that, I did not build this. For anyone who wants to look at it, it's called worldmonitor.app. I think someone built it over the weekend. And it's actually pretty cool. And I mean, they probably vibe coded it, but if anyone wants to actually check it out, it's a good way to get an overview on everything. UAE, Qatar lobbies allies to persuade Trump to end the Iran war soon. Okay. I don't know if that's going to happen, but you probably have some Middle Eastern allies that want to end this. Also, the ETF inflows on Bitcoin, we're seeing Bitcoin get some momentum. ETF inflows have been really good on Bitcoin as per Thursday and Friday. You're finally getting some buyers step in. On Friday, $254 million. Thursday, 506. Wednesday, 257. So you had almost 800 million come into the Bitcoin ETFs last week, which was good for BTC. So once again, he has not built anything. Yes, because I was monitoring the situation. Okay, I can't build stuff when I'm monitoring the situation. It was so funny. My sister, because I went back home for the weekend, she came into my room. She's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I'm monitoring the situation." She's like, "What situation?" I was like, "You don't know what's happening in Iran?" She's like, "No." I was like, "Do you want to know about it?" She's like, "I mean, I don't really care." I was like, "All right, then leave me alone and let me monitor the situation." Okay? Because I need to monitor it, even though I have no impact on it. It is funny because once I finally told my sister what's happening, she's like, "Oh, so we're like World War III." I'm like, "No, bro. Like this is why I don't want to tell you it." Like you try to explain it, and she's like, "Okay, so it's like it's over, right? Like World War III." I'm like, "No, that's not what's happening. It could happen, but like there's a lot more nuance to it." She's like, "So Trump just sent this for no reason." I was like, "No, there is a reason. You can believe it or not believe it, but this is the nuance." And she was like, "So why is he bombing everybody?" I'm like, "Okay, like this. I don't even know how we talk about this anymore." Ignorance is bliss. That is correct. Ignorance is bliss. And then my dad, dude. My dad's on Facebook all day, and he gets all these stupid Facebook reels that are just full of shit, fake news. And he's like, "Did you hear about this?" I'm like, "Dad, that's not true." He's like, "No, but I saw this reel about it." I see this reel. I'm like, "This is the most garbage AI slop you could imagine. Only like 65-year-olds would actually watch this stuff." And you can't blame them, right? Because it pops. I mean, I fall for some of this stuff sometimes. And so whenever I talk news with him, I have to try to really explain that some of this stuff ends up being fake. Nonetheless, you have to monitor the situation. All right, where is Trump? It's been 30 minutes. He's still not live yet. I'm glad to know your dad is the clickbait king like my dad. Dude, he said something about Tesla once, like 3 months ago, and I literally want to throw his phone. I'm trying to remember what he said. He said Tesla's making a phone. And I'm like, "No, Dad, they're not making a phone." He's like, no, they're making a phone. I'm like, "Dad, I promise you, they're not making it." He's like, "They announced it today. They're coming out with a phone." I'm like, it's like, "How do you know this?" And then he shows me this freaking reel. And I'm just like, "Dad, that's fake." He's like, "Why do you think it's fake?" I was like, "It's fake." He was like, "Why are you like judging the guy?" Because it's some Indian dude in the fake reel who's saying that Tesla is like, "Oh, but this is the Indian guy." I'm like, just because he's Indian doesn't mean that it's not fake. It's fucking fake. It's not real. There's no iPhone competitor from Tesla. Now, as a society, OpenAI update on the strikes. Let's hear from this.
Says live outside of Anthropic's headquarters in San Francisco for today's Tech Check. Morning, Dee.
Hey, good morning, Carl. So there are fresh chalk messages of support out on the sidewalk here and in front of OpenAI headquarters. That is new because the story is still moving very quickly. Just in the last hour, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent announced the department is terminating all use of Anthropic products, saying, quote, "No private company will ever dictate the terms of our national security." So this is now spreading beyond the Pentagon. The administration is making an example of Anthropic across the federal government. Anthropic, for its part, says that it will challenge that supply chain designation in court. And yet the backlash is going in the other direction here. Over the weekend, Anthropic's Claude app, it hit #1 spot on the App Store, dethroning ChatGPT for the first time ever. So OpenAI may have won the government, but Anthropic is winning the narratives with consumers and developers so far. But this is far from over because at its core, this is about who should decide how the most powerful military on earth uses AI, an unelected CEO in San Francisco or elected officials and the laws that they pass. Now, a source familiar with the negotiations tells me that the real deal breaker for Anthropic was the surveillance piece of this. The Pentagon wanted to use AI to analyze bulk data on Americans. The current system, it shows where you've been, but add in AI and that becomes a lot more powerful. It can predict theoretically where you are going. OpenAI's deal only restricts private data, not this kind of publicly available data. And all of this matters because now the template for every AI military deal and what comes after it. This is sort of set the precedent. And it could also be a playbook for the labs as models are increasingly becoming commoditized. Anthropic is essentially building a moat based on values, not benchmarks. And across town, guys, OpenAI employees, they are heading into work this morning as well. They are being greeted by fresh messages on their sidewalks as well, against the deal that Sam Altman signed over the weekend. And what's interesting, too, is a lot of the messages on the sidewalk there are directed towards OpenAI employees, asking them to use their voices and call out what's happening. And remember that nearly 100 of them signed a letter before the weekend backing Anthropic's position over their own company's deal. So how Altman responds to them may tell us a lot about what comes next.
Dee, it's one thing for the Pentagon to cancel your contract. It's another for them to then say, oh, also, you can't do business with any of our other vendors. On Friday, critics called that a form of corporate murder and wondered if it would have a chilling effect on tech's willingness to do business with the government.
It's such an interesting debate right now, right? It's who makes this call? Is it the government or is it a private company CEO? And that is certainly the part that Anthropic is challenging, saying that they're going to challenge that supply chain designation in court. And it's very split right now. I mean, OpenAI, Sam Altman, he saw the opportunity to take this deal. It's a $200 million Pentagon deal. But like I said, Anthropic is kind of winning the narrative here because the fact that they're willing to walk away from it tells, corporate America in particular, that they have a great model that the Pentagon wants, but now they're replacing or trying to replace, and two, that they will walk away from things based on principles. And that could be powerful. We're seeing that it's powerful with consumers already, and we'll see how this shapes up during the day, because I think the employee piece is going to be really interesting. We've seen this in tech before with Google and government contracts. This is now playing out in the AI era where the stakes are arguably much higher.
Yeah, as Claude goes to #1 on the App Store.
So Pulte from the Federal Housing Administration just tweeted that, and he said, we are also getting rid of Anthropic. So now you got the FHA and the Treasury that are getting rid of Anthropic, including the use of its Claude platform. By the way, OpenAI's San Francisco headquarters, a bunch of people use chalk to write on the sidewalk. Mass surveillance, killers, show the contract, as you're seeing right there on the screen. So you do have a lot of people that are, kind of expressing their dismay with OpenAI. Quite frankly, OpenAI might start to get some of the Palantir treatment in terms of working with the government. And I guess Sam Altman has decided that that's something that he's willing to deal with, but Dario went the opposite direction. And you're seeing the difference right there with Anthropic. Wow, Nvidia, 182. S&P's got to be close to green. S&P is green, baby. We went green. We went greeny green. Greeny green on the day. SPY 686. Now, hopefully, if this Trump speech goes well, we might be able to stay green. But we did go green. Iran's Revolutionary Guard says that fuel tanking burning in Strait of Hormuz after being hit by 2 drones, as per Iranian news agencies. When it comes to the Strait of Hormuz, again, if Iran really tries to block it or cause issues, the Saudis make too much money and the U.S. needs oil at too much of a economic need in regards to oil prices that I don't think they're going to allow the Iranian military or the IGRC to keep the Strait of Hormuz closed. So there might be issues with the Strait of Hormuz. You might have tankers that get burned, but like a full-on blocking, I think, would last less than a couple of days before other militaries get involved. Robin right there, 79.50, Palantir 145, Nvidia high of day 182.60, Meta almost 660, Oracle almost 150, Microsoft trying to push 400. Someone just bought Nvidia $17 million calls for 200 strike. Let me confirm that option flow. People were buying a lot of Nvidia calls on Friday as well, even as it was tanking. So it would not surprise me if people think this thing gets back to 200 pretty easily, to be honest. Celsius, that's down 5. Zeta just went green. Robinhood hit 80 again. Palantir still pushing. All right, so the entire market kind of flipping into more risk on. Bitcoin, almost 70, folks. You just beat 69970. We got 90 more bucks if we see 70,000. Last time we saw 70 was February 14th, Valentine's Day. So it would have been about 2 weeks until we get there. Yeah, I don't know why ELF is down 10%. I have no idea. That's kind of weird why that one's getting hit. How about Nike? Is Nike down with it? Nike, it's not down as much, but it's down. It's down 1.2. What do we think? Who's going to be the big winner in this Anthropic OpenAI thing? Like, I think Anthropic's going to get like the attention for the coming weeks because like they're the ones who picked the side of morality or whatever. But dude, losing government contracts that eventually, when Anthropic and the models get really, really good, are going to be to the tune of tens of billions of dollars. The amount of subscriptions they would have to sell to be able to replicate that is just not practical, especially because ChatGPT still is the king when it comes to the consumer. Rocket Lab going green as well. And maybe they're okay with that, right? That's a decision Dario has made. But economically, I wonder if it affects the valuation to any extent. I also wonder if it helps justify OpenAI's valuation as they just raised that $730 billion. Wow, Nvidia, she's going for 183. She's going for 183. Did Bitcoin hit 70? Bitcoin did hit 70. There she is. There she is. Bitcoin at 70,000. Trump is still not live yet. We are waiting for it. Should be soon. Let me check the White House stream if he's live. Oh, all right. I think he's entering. All right, here we go. Here is Trump. He's live now.
Ladies and gentlemen, please bow with me as I ask God's blessings upon this ceremony. Almighty God, your steady hand has guided this republic for nearly 250 years. From its birth in the wilderness to this very hour, we come to you now with grateful hearts. We assemble here today to honor men who, when the test came, were steadfast and unmovable. We thank you for the unyielding conviction of Master Sergeant Roderick Edmonds, who looked evil in the eyes and did not flinch. And we thank you for the battlefield grit of Command Sergeant Major Terry Richardson, courage that saved lives in Vietnam and courage that stands before us today. And Lord, we thank you for Staff Sergeant Michael Allis, who, in a final selfless act, made his own body a shield for a friend. Bless the family and friends of these great men of honor, O Lord, and forbid that we leave this place as mere admirers of their heroic deeds. Plant in our hearts a measure of their courage that we might prove worthy of the freedom for which they and generations before them defended. Lord, now let the light of liberty continue to shine on our great nation. We pray in the strong name of the one who guides us. This will defend. Amen.
Thank you very much, Chaplain Green. Wonderful job. Appreciate it. And thank everybody for being here, and please feel free to sit. So before we begin this important ceremony, and there's no ceremony that can be much more important than this, let me provide a brief update on Operation Epic Fury. Today, the United States military continues to carry out large-scale combat operations in Iran to eliminate the grave threats posed to America by this terrible terrorist regime. Following our obliteration of Iran's nuclear program in Operation Midnight Hammer a short while ago, we warned Iran not to make any attempt to rebuild at a different location because they were unable to use the ones that we so powerfully blew up. But they ignored those warnings and refused to cease their pursuit of nuclear weapons. In addition, the regime's conventional ballistic missile program was growing rapidly and dramatically, and this posed a very clear, colossal threat to America and our forces stationed overseas. The regime already had missiles capable of hitting by us nuclear weapons. We were the ones that were complaining. We were the ones that wanted it stopped, but everybody was behind us. They just didn't have the courage to say so. An Iranian regime armed with long-range missiles and nuclear weapons would be an intolerable threat to the Middle East, but also to the American people. Our country itself would be under threat, and it was very nearly under threat. I was very proud to have knocked out the Iran nuclear deal by President Barack Hussein Obama. That was a horrible, horrible, dangerous document. They would have had nuclear weapons 3 years ago, and they would have used them. But I'll not let that happen. For almost 47 years, this regime has been attacking the United States and killing Americans. Every time you see someone with missing arms and legs or a face that's been absolutely shattered violently, it was almost certainly caused by an Iran roadside bomb. They were put there by General Soleimani, who was the father of the roadside bomb. Very proudly, he thought, but I terminated him in my first term. This was our last best chance to strike what we're doing right now and eliminate the intolerable threats posed by this sick and sinister regime. And they are indeed sick and sinister. Our objectives are clear. First, we're destroying Iran's missile capabilities, and you see that happening on an hourly basis, and their capacity to produce brand new ones and pretty good ones they make. Second, we're annihilating their navy. We've knocked out already 10 ships. They're at the bottom of the sea. Third, we're ensuring that the world's #1 sponsor of terror can never obtain a nuclear weapon, never going to have a nuclear weapon. I said that from the beginning. They're never going to have a nuclear weapon. They were on the road to getting one legitimately through a deal that was signed foolishly by our country. And finally, we're ensuring that the Iranian regime cannot continue to arm, fund, and direct terrorist armies outside of their borders. And we thought we had a deal, but then they backed out. And they came back, and we thought we had a deal, and they backed out. I said, you can't deal with these people. You got to do it the right way. Today, we grieve for the 4 heroic American service members who have been killed in action and send our love and support to their families. In their memory, we continue this mission with ferocious, unyielding resolve to crush the threat this terrorist regime poses to the American people, and a threat indeed it is. We have the strongest and most powerful by far military in the world, and we will easily prevail. We're already substantially ahead of our time projections, but whatever the time is, it's okay. Whatever it takes, we will always, and we have right from the beginning, we projected 4 to 5 weeks, but we have capability to go far longer than that. We'll do it. Whatever somebody said today, they said, oh, well, if the president wants to do it really quickly. After that, he'll get bored. I don't get bored. There's nothing boring about this. Do you agree with that, Pete? I don't think there's anything, Mr. General. I think there's nothing boring about it. Somebody actually said from the media, I think he'll get bored after about a week or two. No, we don't get bored. I never get bored. If I got bored, I wouldn't be standing here right now. I guarantee you that, to go through what I had to go through. We also projected 4 weeks to terminate the military leadership. And as you know, that was done in about an hour. So we're ahead of schedule there by a lot. But please join me in thanking every American service member who bravely is standing in harm's way. They really are incredible. And I just want to thank you. We have a lot of them right here. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. We have a lot of great service members here with us too in this beautiful building. Isn't it beautiful? We're adding on to the building a little bit. We're improving the building. See that nice drape? When that comes down right now, you see a very, very deep hole. But in about a year and a half from now, you're going to see a very, very beautiful building. And there's your entrance to it right there. In fact, it looks so nice, I think I'll save money on the doors because it can't get more beautiful than that. I picked those drapes in my first term. I always like gold, but I think we can save a lot of money. I just saved curtains. But, and it'll be spectacular. It'll be the most beautiful ballroom. I believe it because I built many a ballroom. I believe it's going to be the most beautiful ballroom anywhere in the world. And when you hear all that hammering out there, you know why the First Lady is not thrilled exactly. She said, will the pile drivers ever stop? You know, they go from 6 in the morning.
President Trump, he is there to award a number of Medal of Honor to some of the members of the military, but did kick off starting about the war in Iran, the strikes by the U.S. and Israel over the weekend, talking about
11:30 in the evening. Can you imagine? Here. You know what? To me, that's a beautiful sound. She doesn't like it. I love it. You know what? To me, other than here, because we're donating it, not a penny to the taxpayer. It'll be under budget, ahead of schedule. It'll be 400 million or less. Most people say 400 million or more. No, it'll be less. But when I hear that sound, that beautiful sound behind me, it means money. So I like it. But my wife isn't thrilled. She said, this is getting crazy. I said, don't worry about it. We'll be all finished up in a few months. But now for the reason that we're gathered this morning to recognize the unsurpassed courage of 3 really incredible American heroes, 1 living and 2 no longer with us. So together, we recognize the exceptional valor of Master Sergeant Roderick Edmonds. And maybe I could ask your families to stand because they're beautiful families. I got to meet them. And please. So Staff Sergeant Michael Ollis and Command Sergeant Major Terry Richardson, as they receive our nation's highest military award, the Congressional Medal of Honor. And we're pleased to be joined by Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. He's busy, very busy guy. In fact, I said, if you want, Pete, you can avoid it. General Raisin Kane also. And they said, we don't avoid this one. This is one you wouldn't avoid for anything, right? So we appreciate that you're here. Secretary of Veterans Affairs, who's doing an incredible job, Veterans Affairs, Doug Collins. Doug, thank you. You stand up, Doug. You're doing such a good job. 92% approval rating. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, who's known as Raisin Kane. I liked him when I heard that name, Raisin Kane. I said, if it's true, you're my guy. And it's true. It just turned out it's very true. He's a great guy and a great general. Secretary of the Army, Dan Driscoll, and Army Chief of Staff, Randy George. Thank you. Thank you both, Dan. As well as Senators Tom Cotton, Bill Hagerty. You guys were great on television this weekend. I'll tell you what, can't have a better representative than both of you. Thank you very much. And Representatives Tim Burchett, Jack Bergman, and Nicole Malliotakis. And we have a few others sitting here, but I'm not going to go through it because we have far more important people to honor today. Oh, we have Tom Homan. I got to at least mention Tom Homan. I would be a stand-up, Tom. What a job. Zero people coming in. We had millions and millions of people pouring into our country now that, I mean, I'm not even sure I can believe this number is 0, but it is given out by Democrats. Democrats from the left, and they're rated for the last 9 months. We had 0 people come illegally through our border. Right, Tom? So I want to thank you very much. And I also want to salute 6 former Medal of Honor recipients, William Swenson, Jim McLuhan, Walter Marm, Thomas Payne, Sammy Davis, that's an interesting guy. Where is Sammy Davis? We have a big story here, Sammy. You've heard that all your life, I'll bet, huh? And Edward Byers, stand up, please. You all look good. We all look good. We remember the ceremonies. Oh, great. It's a great honor. There's no greater. I tried for myself. I've tried numerous times to get one by myself. I keep getting shut down. They say, you can't do it, sir. Bad protocol. Very bad. I would say the worst. But I'm only kidding. You don't have to say I'm only kidding. Otherwise, the press will come out with it, which they actually did once. Donald Trump wants the Congressional Medal of Honor, but he's been shut down. But now you are brave, amazing people. And I want to thank you all. In 1941, Roddy Edmonds of Knoxville, Tennessee, enlisted in the U.S. Army and soon rose to one of the youngest master sergeants in the military. In 1944, he sailed to Europe to fight in World War II, and he was so enthusiastic and young and full of vim and vigor. Roddy soon found himself on the front lines of the Battle of the Bulge. That was a big one, massively outnumbered by enemy forces. His 1,200 soldier unit fought valiantly until they were completely overrun. The force was massive on the other side, many times the number. After a 4-day death march, one that was covered very well by the history books, through bitter cold, they were put into a German POW camp. Roddy was the top-ranking infantryman in the camp. He was number one, meaning he was responsible for the lives of his fellow service members. On July 26, 1945, a Nazi SS officer issued an order over the camp loudspeaker, loud and strong. He said that only American Jews were to show up to roll call following this morning. He added, all who disobey this order will be shot immediately. There were more than 200 Jewish American soldiers in the camp, and Roddy knew their separation from the group would mean certain death. So that night he summoned his team and devised a plan. The next morning, all 1,200 American men fell in line together, shoulder to shoulder. Enraged, the Nazi commandant rushed forward, drew his Luger pistol, and pressed the barrel between Sergeant Edmonds' eyes. He barked at Roddy. They cannot all be Jews, he screamed loud and again, and staring straight back into the raging face of evil. Sergeant Edmonds replied fearlessly, we are all Jews here. The Nazi officer lowered his weapon and the soldiers erupted in cheers. With total disregard for his own life, Roddy had saved over 200 of his fellow service members. Their camp was liberated 2 months later. We're honored to be joined today by Roddy's son, Chris. Please stand up as Thank you, Chris. Today, your father gets the honor he so courageously earned. And really amazing, right? It's an amazing story. Congratulations to the family of Master Sergeant Roddy Edmonds. The next two we recognize today served in the 1st Battalion, 28th Infantry Regiment of the 1st Infantry Division, better known as Big Red 1. Do you know about that, Pete? Right? Command Sergeant Major Terry Richardson, we are honored to have you.
All right, guys, I think that is it for me. It looks like this is going to be a pretty long speech, and we didn't get too many updates about what's going on in Iran. All we got was the arguments that we've heard over the weekend around, why we needed to do this. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, but no further analysis on where the war is going, how is it going to continue, how many weeks is it going to last. Because this is to honor service members, then I don't even know if he's going to talk about those specific details, or he might do it at the very end, which would be 2 hours from now. So yeah, I don't really know if watching it for the next 2 hours makes the most sense right here, but we'll try to get caught up with all the updates and clips towards the market close. S&P still green on the day. Palantir, green. Rocket Lab, green. Ondas, Red Cat, Kratos, Tesla, Bitcoin, Hood, Nvidia. I mean, it looks like a risk-on day. And not only is it the beginning of March, SoFi getting above 18, but also we were so risk-off for the last 2 weeks of February. You know, maybe you're seeing that reversal right here, even after the events over the weekend. So I guess time will tell, but we're getting a bit of a reversal. Hopefully that continues throughout the week. More updates around this war, especially when attacks continue, as per what Trump said in the morning from the United States. You know, obviously could change how the markets think, but as of now, it seems to be pricing it in and moving forward from there. Amit, please keep monitoring the situation from you. I will continue to monitor the situation. Gold and silver, unfortunately, have not been able to catch a bid today. So makes sense, right? Bitcoin goes up, silver getting hit badly. Gold basically flat, but silver right there down about 7%. All right, I'll be back on the close. We've got a bunch of earnings. We should have Farzad on the close as well, so it'll be nice to talk to him. We have ASTS, Space Mob. I know that's a big one for you guys. Big Bear AI, MongoDB, Software, Asana, Software, Credo, Semiconductors, and then Archer for eVTOLs. So we do have a lot of companies reporting today. We will take a look at all those companies, and we'll keep going from there. It's LA Meetup Month. It is also LA Meetup Month as well. Put the link right here in the chat for those that want to meet up March 28th. Can be really excited. You're going to have a lot of mods there in LA. You know, I know in the midst of a crazy market environment, it's tough to navigate. And, you know, part of the meetup in January, as we were entering into kind of the volatility of February, was also talking about it. So part of the fun of these meetups is just trying to talk to people, get a lot of different perspectives, and continue to try to analyze how this could end up playing out. So I hope to see as many people as possible there. The dollar, by the way, catching a nice bid. So for all the doomers saying the dollar is dead, the dollar is one of the largest safe haven assets outside of gold and silver. The fact that the market's piling into the dollar right there, it's having one of its best days in 2 weeks, also means that the USD might still be a place where people go to when they see things going south. Dollar right there, 98.57. All right, that is what we got. Let's do word of the day. We will end it out. I'll be back in a few hours. And then we'll see what happens. Are you going to be at Nvidia GTC? Yes. We're not really doing a meetup at GTC because, I mean, if you're there, I'm happy to say hi and meet people, but it's not going to be like a formal meetup. But first time I've gone to San Jose. I've been to Palo Alto, been to SFO, but I've never actually been to San Jose. So it should be fun. It should be there. All right, word of the day. What do we got? What do we got? Refractory. Stubbornly resistant to authority, control, or treatment. The market can say refractory to good news longer than most traders expect. Strong word for when something just won't cooperate. Okay, the market is not being refractory today, given we are getting risk on in an environment where you think we might not go risk on. But that is what we're seeing.
Refractory.
All right. There you go. That is our word of the day. I'll be back on the close. Houston meetup likely will be Austin in November. We'll have more details on Texas. Singapore again, likely June. Chicago will be for May. But let's get LA out of the way first. March 28th again. Link is in the description. And I hope to see people there. Again, Farzad should be on around 4:30. We'll get through the earnings, and then we should have Farzad on. I'm just waiting for him to confirm with me, but it should be 4:30. We'll have the daily recap today, and we will keep going from there as we try to monitor the situation. And that's what we'll be doing throughout the entire day. All right. Thank you, everybody. I'll see you guys on the close. We got earnings. Hopefully we'll hear from Farzad, and we'll keep going from there. Bye, everybody. Have a good one.